This is Rama Shinobi and today I am going to narrate what if Naruto and Sasuke were brothers by blood. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Just 30 minutes ago, children and their parents left the academy, leaving Naruto alone on the swing. He made a swing. The full moon shone brightly on his azure eyes, but this was no typical moon. It was a terrible omen rather than excitement that made his blood boil. Sasuke only gave him a HMPH from the sound of his rattling throat, despite his warning. As he watched Sasuke vanish into the tainted moonlight, he pondered why he was not with his parents on open house. He was alone once more. Nobody gave a damn. He was treated like a scapegoat by every villager. Sasuke had given Naruto a terrible beating in a sparring match today. Everyone in the class was ecstatic when they saw the expression on poor Naruto's face and thought he was going to cry like a pathetic bitch, but instead he just ran into the park. Nobody trailed behind. Well, he thought. A female voice called out to him from a distance, but Kami forbade him from being alone. Naruto. Naruto.kun. Naruto was initially taken aback by this woman. No, he gave a headshake. A stunning woman called out to him until she knelt next to him. Naruto looked up and saw that the woman had long black hair, but he was certain he had seen her somewhere because of the way her face looked. Had he previously met her or recognized her as someone else? For the first time, someone outside of the academy and the Hokage referred to Naruto by his full name and added a suffix to make it more formal. She had a big duffel bag slung over her left shoulder and was dressed in a navy blue kimono. He shrugged and asked, "Lady, do I know you? Sweaty, did you happen to see Sasuke, my son?" "Sasuke's mom," he said uncertainly, but Makoto nodded, "and I understand now. You, he go home." "Thank you, but you're coming with me." He shrugged once more, but it took him only a few seconds to notice Makoto's contemptuous expression. He yelled in unison as she pulled him over her empty shoulder. He was aware of it. She would chastise him. He begged, "I not hurt Sasuke. Don't hurt me." If he had no other option, he would kiss the woman's feet. She fervently smiled at him in the hopes that Naruto's attitude would improve, knowing the agonizing trauma he had endured throughout his life as a result of the village's reprimands. "I'm so sorry that I'd scared you. I promise that I will protect you with my life." With so many unclear ideas racing through his head, Naruto looked up at her. "Is this woman real?" "You see, Naruto.kun, I was good friends with your father and best friends with your mother. It was an unfortunate event that had taken place right after you were born. The reason why you were treated wrong because your father, Namikaze Minato the Yondaime Hokage, had given his life to seal the Kyuubi inside of you that nearly destroyed this village. Please don't hate your father for it, understand, he could never use another child and have it take the burden. He wished that for you to be the hero who saved us all by being the jailer of the fearsome gargantuan nine-tailed Kitsune, but the villagers never treated you as one," she wept. Naruto had never imagined that a woman would weep for him. He was shy and afraid, but he knew who his father was, so he wanted to reach out and cuddle up against her waist. He was content. He was able to face Sasuke's mother fearlessly because of it. Being the Yondaime's son. "Cool," he said. He all said at once, "The four Hokage is my daddy, but where is mommy?" Makoto scowled and said, "Your mother, Uzumaki Kushina, was a foreigner from Uzu no Kuni, which is now known as Nami no Kuni. Your father introduced me to her, and I found out that she only had boys as friends. She was a tomboy, very physical, and troublesome at first, but eventually I was able to mentally break down the masculine barrier that kept her from becoming a girl in the first place. We love each other as sisters until I married Sasuke's father. Kushina was the host of the Kyuubi at the time, so I regret that the Uchiha clan used me to spy on her. I'm so sorry again, Naruto.kun. If only I had left the clan with both of my sons and you, we wouldn't have to be caught in the crossfire between Konoha and my clan." Naruto cursed, capturing Makoto's somber onyx orbs. "When a host loses its Biju, they die. I won't allow my husband to abandon you and let the villagers continue to terrorize you. I attempted to adopt you, but the Uchiha clan was held accountable for the Kyuubi invasion uprising, so both the Sandaime and Fukagu were against it. What did your clan do? We were accused of releasing the Kyuubi by taking it from your mother, killing her right away, although, as Makoto is unaware, she lived until the sealing's conclusion in the manga. We also used our renowned Kekkei Genkei Sharingan Do jutsu to control the Kyuubi, but we didn't do that. Before the siege began, the Foundation had enticed us away from Konoha and set us up. For the past 6 years tension built up between the Uchiha clan and Konoha that my husband and his advisors had enough and conspired a true uprising of their own. It was not till today I'd learned their true intentions, stumbling upon the secrets of the Uchiha clan's ultimate do. Jutsu. The Mangekyo Sharingan. To unlock this fearsome Jutsu, the user must be willing to kill the person that they love dearly or a close friend. The Uchiha elite is planning to kill all the weak to obtain the MS. I think my husband will try to kill today and make my eldest son Uchiha Itachi kill Sasuke before the uprising begins. Trust me, Naruto, you are not safe here anymore. If my clan gets a hold of you, they will more likely resurrect the Kyuubi and unleash it upon Konoha. We are leaving the village once we get Sasuke-kun. With a nervous nod, Naruto asked, what happened? They reached the Uchiha estate at that point, but something seemed strange as Naruto climbed over her shoulder and looked around with his blue eyes, taking in every square inch of the landscape. Soon after, a mutilated corpse fell onto Naruto from the rooftop, causing him to scream. The apartment's oak wood floors and the overgrown weed patch were both stained with blood. It was fresh blood. As he gathered the strength to roll the body that had pinned him to the autumn turf, Naruto let out a terrified squeak. No, it has begun. I hope we're not too late, she said, as she had feared. As he heard multiple screams beyond the wooden slide door, Sasuke staggered to the entrance of his home and cautiously slid it open, only to have his eyes widen in horror. His father, Uchiha Fukagu, was found lying lifelessly in his wife's blood, and his blood also contributed to the mass pulp. His mother was hung on the ceiling, her wounds sliced open as blood dripped into a sea of blood. What's happening here? All right, Tucson. A shadowy figure appeared out of the kitchen, gradually approaching him from the front. He looked up as the image of his deceased mother deteriorated. General Jutsu, he thought. Wah. Who are you? A voice that was all too familiar said, Sasuke, and his teeth shattered. He was shocked to see that the man in front of him was, in fact, his older brother, Uchiha Itachi, who had killed them. Sasuke grimaced as he gripped his left shoulder, feeling the warm liquid dripping his hand in a sea of red. Blood, his blood. Sasuke never saw Itachi throw the kunai that grazed his left shoulder, and the pain started to throb endlessly like a drumbeat. Oh, he knelt in pain. Where is mother? Why did you kill father, Ni-san? Don't worry, she's out somewhere. Soon, mother and the other members of this abandoned Kami clan will join their father. I regret not being able to protect the innocent people who would have continued the legacy of Obito and Shisui. As he watched the clan being slaughtered in front of him, he cried out, wanting to do something about it, but his legs failed him. He soon returned to the physical world, squirming and coughing out saliva, feeling as though he had been zapped with electricity. He could not take his eyes off his Oni. Sans bloodlust shuriken iris ms still coughing. He still wanted to feel angry, but phobia started to replace his hatred. Anxiety would eventually take its toll. So you were the one who killed them. Shisui was killed by you. I believed him to be your friend. Little brother, you will understand what I did is for the best of the clan. Fake. With such venom, he spat, you are a killer, a traitor, I'll kill you myself. Sasuke pushed the thrown kunai out of the door with such force, and he charged carelessly, but the general jutsu was beginning to take a toll on his body, piercing it with thousands of senbons as he staggered out of control towards Itachi, swung when in range, and was whirled around in a full circle before a devastating roundhouse kick chipped into Sasuke's shoulder, sending the raven-haired boy hurting through the house. Itachi knew that just 4 inches higher could have been a fatal blow, causing Sasuke's head to collapse, and he took one last look at his father, whom he had just killed, before following the skidding trail of broken wooden splinters. When Sasuke looked up, he saw a boy with blonde hair and cerulean eyes staring down at him with a thumbs-up grin. Somehow, Sasuke never thought he had ever felt his knee. Sans foot hit him so hard through his home's walls. He was thrown out of control, and tiny projectiles scraped against his skin, stopping his progress in an unexpected way. Woo Sasuke, man. Are you okay? Sasuke's back was dusted by Naruto. Dobi, what the hell are you doing here? Sasuke asked, staring at him in stupor. Teme, we've come here to look for you. He noticed his mother coming over, crying uncontrollably. Sasuke, there you are, thank the heavens. Mikoto's arms were extended as Sasuke ran past Naruto and exclaimed. Okada-san, brother killed father. He killed everyone. The clan is dead. Mikoto ruffled his buck ravenhair and said, we have to get out of here before the others notice us. You can worry about that later. That won't be required, mother. Could you please tell me where Sasuke and the 9-tailed Jinchuriki are going? Mikoto shuddered, her gaze never leaving his Mangekyo Sharingan, his Anbu uniform smeared with their loved one's blood. Itachi, you cannot use Naruto-kun as a weapon of mass destruction and kill Sasuke. If you want the MS, go ahead and kill me, she spat. With a frown, Sasuke said, "Mother, no. Son, you and Naruto, run for it and no looking back." "I don't think so. Do not move or else I will behead our mother Chan, and that goes for you to Naruto-kun," Itachi said, surprising the toddlers with a sudden step as he stood between them. His katana flushed against his mother's throat. Naruto's body was in a trance as a demonic shroud of chakra covered the Jinchuriki, and he fell to his knees, his eyes flashing from blue to dark crimson, red kitsune slits, his whiskered marking thickening, his knuckles whitening as he glared at the older Uchiha brother. "Why, you?" "Cease." With a curious shrug, Naruto looked up at her. His cerulean orb was restored, and the Kyuubi shroud was decimated. "Itachi, please do not hurt them," Naruto said. "For an exchange, let them go and kill me. I was an ungrateful and terrible mother. My punishment will be death." All I could hope for was that I had the guts to try before Sasuke-kun was born. "Actually, you wouldn't have to be alone because his parents would still be living." "What I want to know is where are you taking the kids?" Itachi laughed. "Far away from the elders as possible, they will tear us apart." "I see," he said, "it was the elders who suggested I eradicate our family to prevent the uprising. Father thought I was working for him, little did he know it of my true intentions. Erasing the clan would prevent Konoha shinobi bloodshed and countless innocent casualties. It wouldn't matter, your father was going to have the strongest or rather the elite of our clan murder the weak. Children included. Within the plots of the massacre that never took place, Fukagu was supposed to kill me and have you kill Sasuke obtaining the MS. Itachi and Sasuke both looked at each other and replied, "What, together? It was just a matter of an hour in your favor. If you're an hour late, you'll be confronting the MS elite. I ran to get Sasuke and Naruto and planned to flee Konoha. Now I want to know is why didn't you spare the children? Goddammit, Itachi. They deserve to life and possibly carry out Obito and Shisui's dream of protecting Konoha from the elders' corruption." I never saw it coming. The second she spoke, his brain registered it. "Damn you, 2.san. He sighed, "I simply couldn't because I was not the only one here." She was suddenly irrelevant because she had taught Konoha to be by his side during the massacre. "You failed to notice me. I saw you kill Shisui and took his left Sharingan eye. I know you never murder him, so please I ask if you come with us, hun," she said. Itachi's eyes widened like grapes. Itachi returned to his original topic, saying, "Which brings me to this. The man who helped me is also Uchiha. How in the world she managed to hide her presence from him would always be a mystery. He's very old but young at the same time. He was responsible for the extraction of Kushina Sama's 9 tails. This man is someone that none of you should ever cross paths with him. Unfortunately, for you, Naruto, beware of him in the future. He will come for you eventually because of the Kyuubi that resides inside you and try to do the same. Like he'd done with your mother. If the Kyuubi is removed from inside of you, you'll die." Naruto gulped and asked, "Who is he?" "He is one of the fiercest opponents of Shodai Hokage Senju Hashirama and the founder of the Uchiha clan." "You're referring to Uchiha Madara," she cried out. "Whatever power he acquired many years ago made him immortal, but he wanted everyone to think that Hashirama killed him. Not affected by aging. He had exacted revenge on the clan that had deceived him tonight. The last thing we should do for him is that. We will put an end to his miserable life the next time, but in the meantime." Sasuke had seen the Uchiha estate highlighted in black. Light X.ray vision before he started to shiver, but Itachi, Mikoto, and Naruto stayed by his side as a black curtain suddenly blinded them as they appeared in Itachi's MS General Jutsu. Naruto felt strange and his body felt heavy, with him wondering why Itachi needed to use his General Jutsu again. "Why are you employing that General Jutsu once more, Ni-san? I'm not the one. A whole new level of Tsukuyomi has been cast. I'll attempt to free us. It's pointless, boy. But Uzumaki and Uchihas, don't be scared of me. I've only come to commend you on your efforts to eradicate my brother's lust and hatred, which have plagued the Uchiha clan since its inception. I also want to give the Uzumaki child a gift." "Why? You're," Mikoko said, palming her face. "Izuna Uchiha." He was standing there in platinum, navy blue armor, and his duck-butt raven hair was exactly like Sasuke's. Naruto's azure eyes were switching between them at the same time, and he thought Izuna was a better fit as a brother than Crimson Eyes with a triangular, tomato iris of a Sharingan that scared the living daylights out of him. When Izuna smiled, it was comforting. Izuna sounded younger than he actually was. "Welcome to my domain, Uzumaki and Uchihas. For the past 75 years, my spirit, the instant Oni Sama, took my eyes for himself. I sealed my power, which had wandered the earth, into Tsukuyomi and Izanagi. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, which has an infinite supply of light and never fades like the regular MS with excessive power exertion, was then given to him. Eventually, the user's eyes would lose their light, rendering them permanently blind to daylight. How on earth is that possible? I never heard such a calibration, pondered an enigmatic Itachi. Previously, even of Izunagi. Would you mind telling me? Izuna laughed. You wouldn't be aware of it, of course, since your clan's secret hideout has no record in the Uchiha archives. Among the Uchiha clan, Izunagi is regarded as the most feared and taboo. General Jutsu enables the user to infuse themselves with an illusion of a physical form or the opposite, such as being instantly stabbed by an enemy kunai. As if you hadn't been stabbed, you could go back and make your wound disappear. You could, however, transform illusions into tangible forms. According to the Rakudo Sennin, sage of the Six Paths, he first employed this exact method to create the majority of the life found in the shinobi world known as Banbutsu Sozo, creation of all thing. All 9 of the Bias were also made with it. Everyone but Sasuke and Izuna were in complete shock. Sasuke didn't know what Bias were, and based on Naruto's expression, he felt excluded. What do Naruto and his family know that Sasuke doesn't? He asked himself. What the hell is a Biju? He snorted. How did you discover this mythological theory? Itachi crossed his arms moodily and sneered. What I say is not a myth, I'm sure of it. Everywhere on this continent, Oni-sama had found ruins that held documents about the history of the Sixth Path and his way of life. As the kami of shinobi, he was revered in your legends. Why, he claimed in his writings that the Jubi 10 Tales, a 10th Biju, almost destroyed the human race. He had to seal the Jubi inside of himself to stop Armageddon. So he was the first ever Jinchuriki. The Rakudo Sennin made the decision to seal the Jubi's body in the sky, out of men's reach, in his last moments. It eventually transformed into the moon, and because of its enormous chakra, he had to divide the Jubi's chakras into 9. He then used Izunagi to create 9 life forms, each of which would contain a different part of the Jubi's chakra. He had not explained in detail how he had done the sealing. He had been afraid that when he died, the Jubi would be raised from the dead. The Rakudo claimed that his 2 sons would possess his body, eyes, and chakra before he had transitioned into the afterlife. If you said is true, then hasn't anyone discovered such tablets? Sneered Makoto, who didn't buy a minute of his story. The Rakudo himself claimed that only those who had possessed his eye, the Rinnegan, will completely decipher the hieroglyphics, meaning that those who possessed any jutsu, such as the Sharingan, would only partially decipher the hieroglyphics. Archaeologists of the old ages had found the tablets but were unable to decipher their contents. I don't understand how Madara had fully deciphered the tablets. Perhaps using the Shodai's abilities contributed to it. I'm confident he'll return for the Kyuubi. Perhaps he was able to do so because both of the sage's chakras were split, but his primary objective is to create an experience that the world must never have. I only know that he was researching Mugen Tsukuyomi. He retorted, Mugen Tsukuyomi. Repeatedly. There was more to learn than meets the eye, and Fukagu could never be certain of how much he had learned because his father's daily activities had taught him about their ancestors, heritage, and techniques. He thought that every new piece of information about his clan was exciting, so he mentally cursed himself. Fugaku had reasons to keep taboos from Itachi in case his son rebelled against the clan, which would have made the father fearful, or he, like many others, had been unaware that such powerful general jutsus existed. The details of this general jutsu Oni-san was working on when I was alive are unknown to me, but according to his memo, in order to ensnare humanity in its glare and enslave them to his will for all eternity, the jutsu was created to cast his MS onto the moon. Despite the fact that Naruto was still too young to feel hatred, the 4 of them thought, how absurd and completely barbarous it is to want world domination and control. Who was this madman who had killed his parents and so many had perished? It escaped his lips from the sound of a growling, which never left Izuna's gaze. Can Mugen Tsukuyomi be powered by the Kyuubi? We wouldn't be having this conversation if he hadn't had the Kyuubi in his possession twice. In addition, he had studied one final item. Insurrection of the Jubi. The Kyuubi is just one component of the whole picture. Somehow, he would have to seal all 9 Bijus. Touché. You will need to be on the lookout because even he cannot accomplish it by himself. Stop him from doing that. He looked back at the blonde toddler and said, Boy, avoiding your fate will only await your demise. I'm doing this out of justice, not vengeance. Whether you hide and flee or not, Madara will still find you. Would you like my abilities? Hey, that guy out of his mind. I will. Won't let him control everybody Dadbeo. Ta promise of a lifetime. He smiled enthusiastically. Makoto laughed at his ridiculous antics, but she didn't say much because she thought Izuna might still be dangerous. She now believes that Naruto has inherited Kushina's raucous and immature demeanor. Naruto never held back when expressing his opinions. He desired to use Izuna Sensei's strength and knowledge to repay the ancient Uchiha. Itachi was still uneasy about all of this, though. What if it was a trap and Izuna had a covert desire to come back to life? Naruto was having a good time, and Itachi couldn't help but smile. He saw that Sasuke was oblivious and silently confused about the entire meeting with Izuna. Then his gaze returned to Izuna. Uzumaki-kun, I lived long enough to see your parents grow up. Your parents wanted to end the shinobi system and break the cycle of hatred. Madara wants the same, but he believes in slavery, while your parents want people to recognize each other through mutual understanding. You know why your parents' goals are pointless in this world? Naruto shrugged. Hatred has been mankind's oldest disease, and the main source of this disease is jealousy. People envy each other every day for foolish reasons like love. Let me tell you a story about the Rakudo's sons. Prior to his death, he gave the oldest son his body and the yin and yang portions of his chakra, as well as his eyes. However, who did he choose to be his successor? His younger son was his choice. The Battle of the Ages started shortly after his father's passing when the oldest son attacked his younger brother out of pure jealousy. The struggle with their descendants lasted for many generations after they departed into the afterlife. Later, the youngest son's descendants became the Senju clan, while the eldest son's descendants became the Uchiha clan. This rivalry raged against one another for centuries until the Senju started to fall apart like flies. When the Madara killed Senju Hashirama in secret at the Valley of the End, the Uchiha clan ultimately won. The Uchiha clan's final chapter is tonight. The Old Testament, at least. There will be a New Testament. The Uchiha clan will finally follow the will of fire, Itachi said, pretending to cough. Izuna laughed uncontrollably. Everyone looked at him with insanity. That is indeed what I've been waiting to hear from you Uchihas for 75 years. Though the Old Testament has passed on both sides, the Uchiha and Senjus were not the only bloodline of the brothers to evolve into shinobi clans. The Uchiha has the Hyuga clan. Its Byakugan is indeed the sister Do Jutsu of the Sharingan. The Uzumaki clan is relative of the Senju clan. They both shared the Rakudo Sennin's Yang chakra, and these two clans have magnificence power to control or suppress the Biju. I tell you, jealousy is not the only spark of hatred that will taint a person's heart. Vengeance and lust for power will drive a person on the brink of insanity. You are just like my older brother in his youthful days. He was boisterous, obnoxious, a joker, and a prankster before our cousin was brutally raped and murdered by a drunken Senju shinobi. After our mother's death was revenge, my brother was never the same again. The childish boy who used to make me laugh and comfort me was dead. I was a fool and followed in his footsteps in obtaining the MS. You too killed your best friend, according to 2.san. Is it accurate? That is where I regret my destiny, Izuna said, her lips forming a straight line. I was terrified of becoming like him. In my dreams, the guilt followed me around. I will always remember my best friend's final moments. It resembled an afterlife curse. Until the day I passed away, he had haunted me in my dreams. Still, will you enlighten me how you kept your existence hidden amongst Konoha shinobi? In order to enable my ghostly figure to trek Konoha, one had carved out a taboo fuin beneath the Konoha that permanently sealed my mind and soul away. Since I can never go too far due to chakra depletion, I can refuel there within my realm, the fuin. What occurs if your chakra is exhausted? Naruto inquired. Dobi, Sasuke said with a headshake. Itachi was aware of the real motivation for Naruto's education, and he was disappointed when Fukagu prohibited him from interacting with the Kyuubi's ship. Good riddance, he thought, but why? Didn't you learn about chakra from your teachers? He wanted to hear it from the boy's mouth, but before Naruto could have a saying, Itachi had cut him off. You simply die. Naruto winced. Ni-san, Naruto likes to skip out of class, said Sasuke with a sly smile. Then he was struck in the back of the head. A welt appeared on the side of his head, and Sasuke realized he was being excluded once more. You must have your justifications. For 75 years, I realize this may sound optimistic. How did you manage to power yourself by conserving chakra? You must have a source of energy to draw from, and after all these years, the barrier team would have been able to locate the chakra signatures concealed beneath Konoha. Such a ponderous curiosity, Izuna chuckled. You're correct. To power my realm, I do require an energy source. The Earth's natural energy is absorbed by the fuin. Go ask your fellow Sannin Jiraiya. I'm not the only shinobi who could pull it off. During the Second Great Ninja Wars, I witnessed him using it. However, enough of the small talk. It's time for me to give you my heritage and powers, Uzumaki. He was mummified in chakra threads that were linked to Izuna's chakra network, and as Makoto vehemently objected, the Uchiha screamed. Her son placed a hand on her shoulder and shook her, shaking his head and telling her, "No." "Oh, what are you doing to me?" he cried. "I'll just seal myself inside of you, child, so don't be afraid. Your Hake Fuin, 8 trigrams seal, will mesh with my Starfire Fuin, enclosing me in you. There's a catch, too. Don't worry, you will be in hibernation for the next 8 months. For that period until your rebirth, I will be teaching you the art of Ken Jutsu inside your mindscape." His onyx eyes were fixed on the elderly brother with the raven hair. "I assume nothing catastrophic will happen to him." Izuna grinned sadly. "I can't guarantee that to you. There has never been an attempt like this. Additionally, I want you to teach your brother Ken Jutsu. In Tsukuyomi, teach him. After Naruto's rebirth, he will receive 8 years of training, 5 hours a week. Konoha requires a 2-edged weapon. That double-edged sword will eventually give rise to the new Sharingan brothers. The renowned duo." Makoto cried out. "I see, you want us to reclaim your and Madara's title." Izuna grinned and said, "It's not taking back." As he looked at the blonde boy for the final time, he said, "It is a simple token of my appreciation to carry out what needs to restore peace among mankind." The moment had come. "Naruto, I'll put myself inside of you. Do you want to say goodbye to everyone?" Makoto was the first to approach him. "Naruto, I had no right to take you away, and you have every reason to hate me, but after everything is over, you have the option to live out the rest of your days in Konoha. But I want you to know that you have my boys as brothers, and you are always welcome to join the Uchiha family. As a Uchiha, I promise that no one, not even the Hyugas, will ever treat you with contempt as a noble." Naruto's restraints prevented him from reaching out and cuddling against her warmth. "Why don't you? I always want a mommy." Makoto was shattered by that. She held Naruto closer than life itself. Naruto responded by crying as well. This, then, is what love is all about. Unbeknownst to him, Sasuke appeared next to him, hugging him tightly. His moistened azure orbs looked up. He no longer saw the melancholy, emo Uchiha. Sasuke gave Naruto a head pat while grinning. In contrast, Naruto was terrified by the disclosure. Naruto never would have imagined that he would see Sasuke smile, but he accepted it. "Naruto, I know our past was not bright, but I agree to with Okawa-san." "So do I. Thanks Sasuke." Itachi-san, Anusa commanded, "Shut your eyes." Naruto followed instructions for no more than 30 seconds. The larva glowed blue and hazel as the chakra threads melted. Naruto was then covered. A human-sized cocoon, in which Naruto had spent 8 months in hibernation, was the finishing touch. Itachi had threatened Konoha to drop all the charges against his mother during the 8 months, forced Hiruzen to sign adoption papers, assured him that his family would not suffer any harm, and issued a 1-year cease-fire for all Anbu divisions listed in the Bingo Book database. If Itachi's demands were not met or ignored by Hiruzen and the council, Itachi would not think twice about coming clean and telling Konoha residents and the rest of the world about the conspiracy behind the Uchiha massacre. The Uchiha waited for Naruto to resurrect in the yard. They faced the old Uchiha cabin with their backs to it. Like a sign 8 months ago, Sasuke believed the moon was looking down at them with the same eyes. He would never forget that night for the rest of his life. He had grown to despise his dad. It was well known that Fukagu would not accept him in order to use him as a tool for sacrifice. He observed the transparent blue glow of the cocoon, resembling that of the Shikifujin ogre. Over what appears to be Naruto's dormant body, he can see a shadow fall. His chakra was draining uncontrollably for some reason. He saw that Itachi had given him a forehead slap. What's causing his headache? Sasuke had experienced the same thing, so this was unusual. Sasuke heard Naruto scream, and his mind began to scream as well. Sasuke saw Itachi abruptly close his bleeding left side without control. Amaterasu, he had yelled, and black flames oozed from the exposed MSI. Like wildfire, the flames spread and were instantly absorbed by the cocoon. The transparent blue had turned to a dark, sinister violet. Sasuke was screaming in agony and was unable to concentrate because he could feel Naruto's pain, suffering, and anguish. 2 crimson eyes covered Sasuke's onyx eyes, and his head stopped pounding. Sasuke looked up and showed his mother his newly activated level 1 Sharingan before she could comment. It was a hatched cocoon. The cabin was engulfed in a sea of eternal flames by a towering Amaterasu. Fortunately, no one was inside. "What is that?" Sasuke exclaimed, pointing to the Amaterasu, which had transformed into a giant with a hood over its head. Son, what is that? Makoto yelled, gesturing to the enormous flaming object. Itachi had yelled, Susanoo, as the same ghost had covered him like a suit. The two Susanos gazed at one another with such evil intent. These spiritual beings would only be misunderstood by a fowl. When they saw Naruto naked, they started to collect themselves. The body of Naruto was torn. His shaggy, blonde spikes had lost Minato's golden hue, but he still had a six-pack abdomen that you wouldn't typically see in a child Naruto's age. He had platinum blonde bleached hair. He kept his head down until Naruto was fully upright. Then he jerked, slowly raising his head to meet his family's gaze and glaring back at them with Mangekyo Sharingan by Izuna. A month prior, Itachi's fist struck Susanoo's. The Uchiha family braced themselves for life. Threatening battle. Stay behind me, advised Itachi. Before long, Makoto and her youngest were standing behind. He was intrigued when Sasuke reached out and lightly touched Susanoo's crimson chakra armor, giving him the impression that he had been zapped. Sasuke tried to feel his hand, which was momentarily numb, by shaking it. Power like that, he thought. Itachi-kun, please don't hurt your brother. On her knees, she boasted. Itachi gave her the smallest nod of approval and cocked his head sharply toward her. She was gently embraced by his Susanoo's hand. She found it hard to believe that something so incredibly extraordinary could be so gentle. They lifted her to her feet gently. I won't just need him to deactivate Susanoo before he starts a brushfire, he assured her. After making some minor adjustments to its strategy, Naruto's Susanoo launched a bolted chakra arrow. Sasuke was not prepared for Itachi's Susanoo to use its hand to parry the arrow. Itachi's Susanoo then absorbed the chakra arrow. After that, Naruto's Susanoo started throwing quick bursts of punches. While Sasuke and his mother remained behind Susanoo and watched to see if it would move forward or backward, Itachi either blocked or dodged the blows. When he was given the opportunity to attack, Naruto was pinned against the demolished cabin with his Susanoo. At that moment, Naruto's Susanoo surrendered, its red demonic aura destroying Naruto. Naruto let out a sigh. He was losing his Sharingan. Before reaching the initial stages with just 2 Kama irises, it progressed from MS to level 2 Sharingan. Gasping, Naruto fell to his knees. Uchiha's Sharingan had never been downgraded from MS to first stage in Itachi's experience until today. He questioned whether there would be adverse effects. Well, it's best that he doesn't use the MS so early in life. Ni. Sama, will Chan be alright? Itachi also turned off his Susanoo from play, but he said nothing. Naruto laughed. Sasuke was irritated by his now cerulean switch to Sharingan, which he made intermittently. Teehehe. Just kidding. His family broke out in an exclamation. What saw matter, you scary cats? Sasuke was furious and his blood was boiling. To play a practical joke during such unfavorable circumstances is a curse. Naruto, remind me to kill you afterward. That's if you can, scary cat. The words, don't tempt me, Dobi, snorted Sasuke. Enough, you two. Itachi sighed and shook his head as his onyx eyes took in Naruto's appearance. Before we begin, Naruto, welcome to the Uchiha family on behalf of the entire family. Naruto gave a nod. Yes, dear, Makoto said, clenching her hands together as a warm, gentle smile appeared on her lips. I have taken you into my family while you were hibernating. Legally, I will be your foster mother until you turn 18, but keep this in mind. For the rest of my life, I will treat you as though you were my own flesh and blood. Come hug your mother. Tears streaming down his sun-kissed skin, Naruto embraced the Ravenet, certain that this was no dream. He has a mother and siblings who are worthy of his wildness. Naruto's blue eyes followed Sasuke as he reached for something, and after 10 seconds of reciting the hand gesture, he mentally cursed himself, thinking, out of all the people in the world, I would never have imagined in my wildest dreams that Sasuke would be the first person to shake his hand. Naruto was still hidden. Should he shake hands? Sasuke. Welcome to our family, Ni-chan. Even though he knew he had shed enough tears for the night, Naruto's nose detected the scent of a burning oak tree, and he had deadpanned. Naruto then forced a phony innocent smile, knowing that he was the one who set the Uchiha cabin on fire. He sweated and scratched the back of his head anxiously, wondering how he was going to play the innocent game. Thank you all, if I may ask. How is the house doing? Makoto chuckled and told Naruto that it was not his fault, but boy did he miss the glares he was getting from his bothers. Nami no Kuni. At this time, the daimyo usually locked himself in his office because his thugs were stationed outside, preventing anyone from entering without permission. That is, until he heard groans coming from beyond his office, similar to the sound of bodies clattering on the wooden floor, and he slowly picked up his katana, which was lying idly by a sculpture of himself. He unsheathed the katana, but it was knocked out of his hands as he watched it fall helplessly, and then felt a cold blade flush against his throat. What does this signify, Tyrus? I believed we were in agreement. Oh, plans have changed. I have determined that this land will serve as my operational base, Gato. With a long brown ponytail, the Kiri Nunkin had a face so attractive that most women would squeal before him, but half of it was hidden by a navy blue ninja mask. He was wearing a dark leather trench coat that concealed his black tank top and most of his lower body, making it impossible for Gato to see him. He grinned wryly beneath the mask, sensing the fear radiating from the daimyo's kneeling body. No. I'm begging you, please. I'll do anything. Gato yelled immaturely, boasting from his knees. Did you hear that, Yuna? Tyrus turned to face his fellow kunoichi companion. He made fun of it. Laughing, Yuna said, poor Daiwaimo wants to do our bidding. In addition to wearing the same leather trench coat, the blonde kunoichi wore a pink bikini with exposed cleavage, which Gato assumed was just to get what she wanted from men. She seduced them with her katana in a pink scabbard sheathed in her palms, and she watched as Tyrus held his favorite gold coin, flickering it between each finger, before finally revealing it to the daimyo. Tyrus threw the coin in midair, and Gato watched, his life on the line. Is that so? I say, heads, you live, and tails, you die. Tyrus held out the coin, and Gato's face was grim as he said, tails it is. No. It only took one swing to finish the job, but today was not his day because someone slammed down from the ceiling, saying, huh. He saw another boy kick Yura through the door and the thin drapes and disappear from view, but his eyes were deadlocked on the whiskers, their blades still clinging together, and Naruto was grinning. It was a different swordsman, but this one was much younger than they had anticipated. The boy was wearing an absurd orange jumpsuit. You rant. Where did you come from? Naruto was thrown on his butt, but he recovered brilliantly with a backflip and parried the incoming katana in time. He was annoyed when his katana slid upright, creating sparks. Naruto saw what he was doing and used the momentum to push further in, but the adult's brute strength proved to be too much. He played foolishly, beats me, adding, I'm here for the bounty on your head. Such young for a bounty hunter, a twerp like you will take 20 years of training to be on the same level as me. Don't take me lightly, Datbeo. As his office was being demolished, Gato cried and crawled under his desk, only to be defeated when the desk was split apart by Tyrus's katana. Tyrus batted down the 4 shurikens that Naruto had thrown, then slashed slantwise and hurtled in the boy's blind side. Naruto quickly anticipated Tyrus's movements by ducking while the katana beheaded the statue, almost urinating on his pants when the head of his statue fell silently onto his lap as a reminder that it could have been his. As the daimyo took the brunt of the damage, Naruto shoved him aside and his body vanished in a cloud of white smoke. Look at that, the boy can do Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Tyrus sneered. Tyrus blew out hundreds of water shapes and bonds. Is that all you have? What about this? Nearly blinded, Naruto felt his body afloat as a flash. Bang to be written in a paper tag detonated beneath his feet. His eyes felt like they were on fire, and the only thing he saw were the shadowy silhouettes of someone's katana descending for his neck. He was underwater, but why? That's why. He was trapped in a sphere of what? Naruto rolled hard to his right. Hey, without jutsu, no one can get out of my water prison. If you don't submit, you will perish. What kind of jutsu is this? Chakra cannot be moved or even molded. Despite my lack of hope, I continue to strive. I'll never go back on my Nindo way, Datbeo. Have it your way. As the sphere of water moved through the blonde toddler's chest, the Kiri Nunkin wielding the katana in his left hand and the water prison jutsu jab in his right. Another cloud of white smoke arose from Naruto's body. Damn you with your shadow clones, he screamed. Sharingan. Tyrus parried the boy's katana from behind and dropped the jutsu. He turned and met the boy's red eyes for a moment. Sharingan? Didn't the Uchiha clan got wiped out? He asked, averting his gaze from Naruto's, aware of the deceptive power a Sharingan user could wield through the eyes. Naruto thought about it, the clan is dead, but few lived plus one just joined the family 9 months ago or alive. The second part of the boy's sentence was not understood by Tyrus. I see, you're the first blonde Uchiha I've ever seen. Too bad you will be the last. Naruto laughed. Unfortunately for you, this will be the last time you'll get to lay eyes upon Uchiha. A twine of vines then grew beneath Tyrus, entangling him. They were suddenly outside of Gato's office. He realized he was imprisoned in a general jutsu and asked, "Wah? Since when?" He fought against the vine's binding, but it was in vain. "I've glanced only at your eyes for few seconds." "Few seconds all that I needed. Your fate has been sealed and don't bother breaking the general jutsu, because as we speak, my brother is restraining you. Have a nice life." His entire world went dark. "Wait. Damn you. I swear I will. Gazing at Naruto's Sharingan, Sasuke snorted. When Naruto then started to get up from his chair, he realized that he had witnessed an upgrade. He said without emotion, "Took you long enough, but don't keep me waiting next time." Sasuke's sudden outrage was met with a sneer from Naruto. "What do you expect, Datbeo? I'm the one who's been fighting the leaders while you deal with the small flies. Stop your rambling, Dobi, and just for the record, this was your first. Next time I'll take the lead." He detests this aspect of Sasuke. He can be your best friend in a split second, but Naruto will be annoyed by his mood swings. Naruto detested Sasuke's emo and brooding demeanor, particularly when there was no justification for it. They haven't encountered any fangirls recently, and Naruto definitely had a fair share of Sasuke's admirers. The more they pestered him to be his girlfriend, the more he began to feel the joy of receiving feminine attention. In his mind, Naruto could concur with his brother that fangirls are bothersome and annoying. They don't care about a person's heart, they only care about appearances and popularity. Just one girl. He would only let one girl, but she lives in Konoha, which is miles away. Even worse was the fact that she only had feelings for his brother. She despises Naruto. It would be a miracle if things went that way. Who knows? Perhaps when the Konoha women learn that he is a Uchiha, he won't become notorious. He had his fair share of fangirls on their trip because of this. Sasuke gave him a shoulder bump. "Hey, were you even listening?" "Whatever, Teme. Let's summon Oni-san," he shrugged. Sasuke dropped a scroll out of his hands. The scroll released a screen of smoke, opening magically. Itachi was inside the smoke cloud, but he was not entirely dressed in ninja gear, and his eyes appeared heavy as though he had just woken up. He said, "So how did it go?" after he had yawned. Believe it, every went smooth as planned. When Itachi noticed how Naruto's Sharingan had changed, he laughed. Itachi was aware of Sasuke's internal rage. He extended his hand and said, "Good, you two take the rogue Chunins to the rendezvous point, and Naruto. Congratulations upgrading your Sharingan. Now I can either teach you or give you scrolls to access more advanced general jutsu." "Wow!" Naruto exclaimed as he extended his hand to shake Itachi's, saying, "I never noticed." Sasuke turned his back and spat, sneering, "Dobi, seriously, you can be very dense when it comes to the obvious." The blonde Uchiha suddenly broke into a sly smile. "Teme, how the heck do I post to know when I absolutely feel the same? I haven't looked in the mirror yet. Can you enlighten me for someone who hasn't yet reached level 2 Sharingan? Now that you have the heart of the one I love, you understand how I feel." HMPH. "Dobi." They winced as Itachi poked their foreheads and said, "You two put a lid on it." Playfully putting his brother in a chokehold, Naruto said, "Chan needs to learn how not to envy me." They wrestled around and said, "You're going to have level 2 sooner than you think." "Whatever, and would you mind getting off of me?" They both squirmed away from each other as if one of them had the plaque, and Naruto ended up straddling Sasuke's lap. They both almost puked, and Itachi laughed as he watched, then pretended to cough to get his brother's attention. "Now leave and I will see you two at the cabin." As usual, the adults' expressions were priceless, knowing that the Uchiha brothers were only children. Some would get moody and throw a fit, but once their Sharingan eyes lit up, no one was brave enough to challenge anyone from the Uchiha clan. Depending on the region they were traveling to, the checkpoint was usually packed with ninja hunters. Since Nami no Kuni doesn't have a hidden village, they rely on Konoha or Kiri for help. The boys had no trouble returning home, as usual, with or without Itachi. Occasionally, bandits or thugs would watch for any indications of weakness, and with their menacing red, flashing Sharingan, no one was foolish enough to attack Uchiha. "Plenty yen tihi. For one bounty." Sasuke laughed. "Very good, now you can get rid of that ridiculous orange jumpsuit and buy you some decent clothing." "Hey, stop calling my masterpiece garbage," he sneered. "Additionally, you have the funds to get a respectable haircut and get rid of that duck butt hair." "Why you?" Sasuke said with a frown and clenched teeth as they entered the cabin, which appeared to have been looted, with appliances and furniture in ruins and a struggle from the living room to the kitchen, where the door was. "Sama, hello, Okawa-san," he frantically yelled. He searched every room, and he could also hear Naruto shouting for their mother. "Where are you?" he whispered. Naruto gave Sasuke a tap on the shoulders. His blonde knee. Chan was frightened, as Sasuke could see. Naruto hesitated before handing Sasuke the note, which read, "Here's a note. Greetings, Uchiha brothers. If you want to see this stunning woman again, please do so. I'll need 3 favors from you. You must first retrieve 3 swords. Sakagari Longsword, the Sword of Tuska, Retribution, the Buster Sword, and Masamune, the Sword of Raiden. The map for every sword is secretly owned by Toru, a successful Ken Jutsu master. You can find him at the Heaven's Fall Tavern. He is the head of an infamous Yakuza, so proceed with caution. It will not be easy to fight him. If you manage to get the swords back, on your way to Kirikage no Sato, kill the Yondaime Mizukage. After you've finished your assignment and survived, under the sight of the full moon, travel to the Valley of the End in precisely 2 months. After that, you will give me the 3 swords in return. I'll make sure she doesn't exist any later than midnight." From the Wonders Whisper. A village of bandits, muggers, thugs, and thieves coexisted with inebriated Yakuza samurai warriors in the tavern. Unnoticed by the bartender, Itachi scampered into the back. He discovered that illegal goods were being packed and loaded onto a carriage. Itachi ran to the high beam to watch the thugs, knowing that these things were stolen. You. Stop being lazy or I'll feed you to the wolves," the overseer commanded. "What y'all expect? The heat's killing me." Abruptly, the thug's head dropped from his neck, rolling in a sea of blood indefinitely. The atmosphere in the loading area changed instantly after the overseer wiped the blood stains onto his sash. There was silence in the room. "Anyone else wants to lecture me? As I thought," he said with a laugh. "Back to work, you stupid pieces of human cockroaches." Nobody wants to talk, but someone found it amusing. Whispering, "Speaking for yourself?" Itachi asked. The overseer drew his katana swiftly. "Who said that?" His goons fled in terror, accusing one another of doing it. Itachi jumped across and landed behind the overseer, shouting, "Show yourself." He managed to say only, "You," before being cut in 2. Itachi gave the thugs a fierce glare. "I want to speak to your boss." The thug was stabbed in the heart and said, "Go to hell." W.Y. He fell and perished. "I've warned you all." Itachi slaughtered the thugs in 2 minutes. Every body was brutally cut. Despite everything, the experience was frightening. Itachi was taken by surprise by the leader, who also almost snatched the teen with the raven hair. Black crow projectors took the place of his body. "He said you would come, and you would come for this." Itachi was losing his patience, as the fat samurai twiddled the scroll between his fingers. His katana came out of its sheath. A swift cut was easily deflected. Itachi was dared to continue by the Toru's derisive expression. Itachi has never before been defeated in Ken Jutsu while using his Sharingan. Surprisingly, Toru never used the opportunity to hit him when Itachi was weaker. He got up and picked himself up. "I have no time to engage in this pointless game. I'll give you a final opportunity. I won't send you to meet your men if you give me the map." With an evil laugh, the samurai said, "I want those eyes in return." Itachi let out an emotionless sigh and said, "In all and fairness. Is there a general jutsu repellent somewhere here?" Itachi tried a general jutsu, but it didn't work. Toru and Itachi traded blows while keeping their footwork intact. "Those eyes can't hurt me," Toru said, aware that Itachi was frantically attempting to use general jutsu on him as soon as possible. Their blade clung together. With a sly grin, Itachi was trusted to the ground once more. "I've rigged this place with tags that activated a barrier that nullifies general jutsu." Impressive, but how does Tsukiyomi compare? His world was black, and Toru's gaze never left the Mangekyo. Suddenly, he was roped to a cross-crucifixion style, and all the humor and triumphant feeling in the world vanished, replaced by fear and fear. He was certain that no general jutsu could penetrate the barrier, but he had deceived himself. "That isn't feasible. No general jutsu is strong enough to resist the nullification," he spat. "I can manipulate time and space here. In reality, what will appear to be a second in this world. Here, a second is equivalent to hours in the real world. Not possible. I have never heard of someone using such jutsu. It is the best general jutsu in my clan. I'll give you another opportunity to turn in the map." Take it, just spare me, please. You have a spare life, very well, but since you've given me enough time to wait." Fortunately, no one had witnessed the gruesome ceremony of being stabbed 10,000 times by clones, despite the agonizing screams. "Ni-san. Why are you here? It's about time you two arrived." "You two are here for the same reason. Oni-san." Naruto smiled and said, "You're too good." A ninja must always be on top his game, but, unfortunately, last time, he sighed. We'll retrieve Mom, together, Naruto exclaimed. That's a lifetime Dadbeo promise. Meanwhile, Sasuke was watching Toru have a nervous breakdown. What's wrong with him? Nobody was able to infer Sasuke's state of stupor from his voice. Well, he will no longer be such a bother, Sato Konohakagor. Haruno Sakura was occupied with her daily jog in the morning when a loud platinum blonde interrupted and ruined the day. Sakura simply shrugged in response to the question. Hey billboard brows, guess what? I've heard Sasuke-kun is returning in 3 months from his rehabilitation. I cannot wait till I see my Prince Charming. She clutched her fist as a huge vein appeared on her forehead. Dream on, why would Sasuke-kun want to meet a pig such as yourself? She asked. Ino experienced a similar motion as well. Sasuke-kun's clan will have a conference. My clan. You seriously think I will believe you? His clan is dead. Stop trying to score points. All hell could erupt at any time after this. Believe whatever you want, forehead. You're forgetting that Sasuke's mother and brother are still alive. Daddy is going to have a conference with Sasuke's mother, and I bet they will talk about arranged marriage. Ino printed and left a dust cloud of tracks behind, saying, I don't have time to play around. See y'all later, teehee. You pig. Come back here. Sakura slammed into a person her size without locking her direction. Ouch. A whimpering, angelic voice called out to her, Sakura-san. Since she was the one who shoved the Hyuga heiress, Sakura remained mute. She let out a deep curse. If she were to cause harm to a noble, her parents would ground her for life. She lifted the heiress with haste. She attempted to act innocently by saying, oh, it's only you, Hinata. Sorry about that. That I.iso. Okay, so I've heard Naruto-kun is also coming home. Naruto was the last thing she was thinking about, to put it mildly. She was aware that, based on rumors, Naruto vanished on the same day that Sasuke left for rehab. Hinata, who was suffering from heatstroke, said, why would I care about that, dead last? I don't see why you're so infatuated over him. Don't give me the innocent puppy eye look. It's obvious that everyone can see you are crushing on Naruto. Hinata almost passed out. No, I'm not. Is it that obvious? Sakura gave a cheeky chuckle. Unlike Ino, you're a sweetheart, and now I do feel apprehensive about you dating that obnoxious troublemaker. Sakura-san. I don't think Naruto-kun is not all that bad, Hinata sighed. Sakura shrugged, still unable to comprehend Naruto's thoughts. How could a person with such high standards fall in love with the dead last? She thought about this for a moment. What qualities of him does Hinata perceive that I do not? If he isn't, then why mischief is on Naruto's standard agenda every day? He has no parents to teach him manners and to teach him between right and wrong. Hinata let out a frustrated sigh. That's the problem. He has no parents, and it's not Naruto-kun's fault. I've seen how the orphanage had treated him. They castrated him and treated him like a scapegoat. This happens mostly on his birthday, when Naruto has been beaten to an inch of his life. Adults would refuse their children to come into contact with him. My clan told me that he was a bad influence. I'm sure your parents told you the same. When Sakura heard the stories, she was shocked to learn that they were false. Even if they were just harmless pranks, the villagers wouldn't dare approach to carry out such savage acts. Why would they do that to him? I know his silly pranks are completely harmless, but still. She held on to Sakura's hands as tears streamed down her cheeks. I've known Naruto since he was 5 years old. He once tried to rescue me when I was abducted by a Kumo ninja, and last year, he stood up to a bunch of bullies and took the punishment that was meant for me. Sakura-san. I don't think Naruto had done anything to deserve this chastise. Something terrible of the past has reflected upon Naruto, which he had no control of his fate. If Naruto were a troublemaker like you say, I wouldn't be here today. Sakura gave a headshake. This doesn't make sense. Why would the villagers castrate Naruto? He hasn't done any harm to them. I can see why Naruto would pull these silly pranks. I would do the same if that were to happen to me. I don't think he does it for vengeance or retribution. She sighed. I think he wants to be recognized and be part of this village, not to be treated like an outcast. Every time, restaurants refused to serve to Naruto. Every time stores, markets would raise their prices on their products a tenfold when he enters. I can see the dejection and confusion written over his face. Sakura-san. I tried to reach out to him, but something always anchored me. I can only watch from the shadows and watch him suffer, especially from you. Hinata said it with all the rage in the universe. Hearing the evil tone in the Hyuga heiress's voice made Sakura wince a little. She had never seen Hinata in this condition before. She now felt bad for treating the blonde boy badly. Sakura had vowed to be kinder from the bottom of her heart. That's because I thought he was trying to get in between me and Sasuke-kun. I wouldn't have to castrate him half the time if I knew he was suffering. I thought he was spoiled because he had no parents and could do anything he wanted. He seemed so zealously happy and prideful of himself to assume it was a mask. A facade to hide all the anguish and suffering. That was sufficient to make the Hyuga girl smile. Naruto-kun may be enthusiastic, loud, obnoxious, and naive, but his kindness, selflessness, and determination to become a better man in life put a smile on my face. My admiration of Naruto-kun is the source of my strength, just like Sasuke-san is yours. At least one of the clans adopted him. I'm happy to see he has a family. Sakura's eyes flashed beautiful. Wah! She cried out. Which clan? In a week. Tsuchi no Kuni. Catacombs. The Uchiha brothers slipped down a slipway into a narrow walkway, and Naruto thought that was the best part of the experience. When his body hit a heap of human skeleton remnants, Sasuke let out a scream. He got up and brushed off the dust from the Middle Ages. Naruto assisted himself in harassing Sasuke. An angry expression had swiftly replaced the disgruntled look of terror. Naruto turned away, whistling naively. His smile was enthusiastic. Cool, let's do it again, he said. Sasuke and Itachi were perplexed. Naruto appears to have a fetish for slides. They walked the maze in silence. Sasuke, Naruto, and Itachi alternately activated their Sharingan and followed the chakra pathway that was visible only to Byakugan and Sharingan. They encountered minor issues that almost led them to perish. Paper bomb tags exploded when close targets were within range, and several arrows blasted out from inside the wall. Itachi lighted the wall torches. A warm hallway was illuminated by the glimmering of roaring fire. There were Edo period murals at the end. Itachi took care to check the map one more time. To Itachi's right, Sasuke used his Sharingan to survey the map from a distance. The tower should be up ahead according to the map the Whisper of Wonders left in our possession, he said to Naruto. But it's a dead end, there's nothing here but a wall. Naruto pointed out incredulously. For the first time, Sasuke accepted Naruto's theological justification. It was the end of the trail. He was still unable to acknowledge Naruto's correctness. Do you think I am making this up? The map points here to solve the hidden murals, whatever that is. Naruto merely shrugged in response. Itachi took a quick look at the wall and pointed out. Brothers, use your Sharingans. Just like the chakra pathway, the keys beneath the murals are hidden from view. Both of them thought the same thing, but their vision started to turn ultraviolet to detect chakra signatures. Cool, they both exclaimed, noticing pinkish hues on the floor that led out of the corridor and in every person they saw. Naruto and Sasuke were able to determine each shinobi's chakra level. The Uchiha boys snapped their heads forward and saw the pink hue hidden beneath the murals. Chakra connectors in the form of. What does this mean? Ni-san. Sasuke blurted, it's an eagle. It's a riddle. Take note of the connections between the chakra lines. Before the wall slid upright to reveal another room, Itachi channeled chakra to both his index and middle finger and tapped the empty nodes on all corners of the eagle, which glowed in pulses of flashes. Bingo. Dude, what are you all waiting for? Usually impatient, Naruto would jump into trouble without giving it much thought. Wait, Naruto-kun. Unaware that the monkey's eyes were glowing velvet, Naruto turned his back and waved at his brothers as he ran and stood in the middle of a room filled with nothing but a statue of a monkey sultan. You see, you have nothing to be concerned about. A group of frightening CAT, you guys. Naruto fell into the dying abyss as a trap door opened. Naruto. Sasuke yelled, hardly ever calling Naruto by name. How are you, Naruto-kun? Itachi put his arm around Sasuke's waist and said, hold on to me. Naruto replied, more or less. The Uchiha brothers sighed with relief that Naruto was unharmed, and Sasuke then gave him a gentle punch to the cranium. Itachi had no trouble using his feet to climb down the wall, and Sasuke and Naruto were, to put it mildly, amazed by this climbing technique for the first time. Dobi, please don't do that kind of stunt ever again. I'm going to let hell loose. Without listening, Naruto gestured off into the distance. Is that it? Itachi's eyes moved down the slope, and nothing unusual appeared as he started to walk carefully. He used the torch to light up the walls that were covered in old oil, and the flames spread like wildfire around a huge pyramid. Itachi's crimson Sharingan could never be misread as he watched the ball of rock, which he mistook for an enormous boulder, fall on the slope with the sound of thunder rattling the concrete walkway after Naruto stepped on a hidden button that caused something to happen from above when they were 3/4 of the length down. Stay behind me. Hurry. Is it not possible for you to blast that boulder to Kingdom Come? They could clearly see the pyramid encircled by black water as they approached the edge of a clear. It doesn't matter. When the boulder was 4 paces away from the brothers, Itachi wrapped his arms around them and leapt, allowing the boulder to slip beneath him. Itachi landed on top of the rolling chunk of stone as it sailed through the upright, and as he rode it close to the bottom, he remained motionless while holding the children in his arms and leapt off the rock, using the momentum of the boulder to propel himself forward. He built up enough momentum for another chakra enhancement jump and lounged forward, carefully kicking off his sandals while watching them disintegrate. Itachi carefully molded chakra to the soles of his feet as he landed without making a single splash, and soon he was within reach of the land. However, trouble soon arose when he looked down at his feet. Itachi had never been more excited to land than he was when he kissed the concrete and let go of the boys. Naruto, as usual, was always excited about the rides, slides, and stunts. What kind of water eats up your sandals, Oni-sama? It's acid. I'm glad I didn't let you guys go swimming. Let's continue. A massive 5-foot tall buster sword, buried halfway in a stone, Excalibur style, was discovered after 10 minutes of walking up the pyramid, during which Itachi laughed to his brother's profanity. Sasuke uttered the words, "That's one huge sword." Pulling the sword with all his strength, Itachi said glumly, "It won't budge as I thought." According to the map, the selected individual can only draw the sword from the stone. Sasuke tried, but was unsuccessful. Damn it, it stuck like super glue. It's pointless. The two of you head for the bottom. I'll make use of Susanoo's power. Because he was still intoxicated by the sight of such a magnificent sword, Naruto never attempted to pull the sword. He felt a drive to do so that was too strong to comprehend, but he never had the courage to do so. What? You picked one of my butts. With ease, Naruto withdrew the sword. You fool, what the devil have you done? Sasuke was astounded by what he saw. Why had the sword selected the Dobi instead of him? To his dismay, Itachi could only grin and say, "It appears that Retribution has selected you to be its wielder, Naruto ni-chan." To Sasuke's astonishment, Naruto tested the blade with such ease that he never thought he would act the way he was expressing himself to a new sword. Above the pyramid, a stairway suddenly appeared, and the Uchiha used it to leave. Shimura Danzo, the head of the Anbu Root Division, summoned all the clan leaders to the assembly hall, which was filled with council members from the shinobi branch and the civilian branch. His animosity toward the Uchiha clan grew after Itachi failed to murder every member of his clan. Old friend, I'm curious. What significance do you want to discuss with us today? Curious, Hiruzen asked. As usual, Danzo said nothing, saying, "You know what I speak of, the Uchiha family and the nine-tailed brat." Old friend, why must you always refer to Naruto's Jinchuriki status and not address him by his name? Hiruzen smoked on his pipe, and as he exhaled, he removed the pipe from his mouth and crushed it, ignoring the burned tobacco that was burning his fleshy palm. Because you know what he is. No one in this tower that guards our very foundation will not refer to Naruto by his Jinchuriki status, he shot back bitterly, which is why I'm going to add to the decreed. I want to remind everyone that Naruto is officially a noble, and those who oppose the decreed face harsh consequences. Do I express myself clearly? Everyone nodded. All right, so what are you thinking of now? Now that the old war hawk had put Hiruzen in a bad mood, no one dared to protest. It will take 2 months for the Uchiha family to arrive. How will things proceed once they get there? They might be planning an uprising, working with other countries to attack us, for all we know. At the very least, many were confused, and many had a lot of questions, but Nara Shikaku beat them to it with just a phony cough, which attracted attention to himself as he cleared his throat, and he grinned as the room fell silent and all eyes were on him. Danzo was not happy to be interrupted. Danzo nodded and said, "I apologize for being impolite, Danzo-sama. However, I would like to know what prompted you to come up with this theory. According to what I understand, the Uchiha clan, along with the first 2 clans to lay this foundation, is devoted to Konoha. Are you aware of anything that we are not?" It was evident that some of you were totally ignorant of the traitor and murderer's motivation. Danzo's sneer had not gone unnoticed. They could be brainwashed for him. You're overstating things. There is no proof that Itachi departed with them. Skepticism will bring bad luck, Inoichi interrupted. But I might have to accept Danzo's theory. Itachi would have plenty of time to meet up with them, as it has been almost a year, Himura hinted. There was a lot of arguing among them, but Shikaku finally said, I've been wondering for a while why Itachi spared his mother and brother. For what reason did he ask his mother to adopt Naruto? With a sigh, Hiruzen said, Makoto was like a sister to Uzumaki Kushina and her best friend. Because of our charges against his clan, Fukagu declined to adopt Naruto. That would imply that Makoto harbored a secret grudge against her spouse. Perhaps it is not appropriate or my place to inquire, but were Itachi and Kakashi his bodyguards? That is private information. The Hokage is under no circumstances required to respond to your inquiries. Even if you are the Jonin commander, you are not allowed to discuss any information about Enbu Black Ops operations with the regular division. Inoichi exclaimed. I interject. From his chair. You're speaking out for yourself. That might be the case with your secretive Enbu ROOT division, if the Hokage wishes to debrief us with Enbu internal affairs. He has the privilege to grant any shinobi under his jurisdiction information. That will be enough Yamanaka-san. My sincerely apology, Sandame Hokage. Sama, he said with a bow. He waited until Inoichi was seated and said, not at all, you were only speaking your mind. Anyways, we will proceed according to the plan, that is if you have any conclusive evidence, old friend. Hiruzen raised his eyebrows. Dejectedly, he said, I do not. Any more inputs before we conclude today? I do, however. The Hyuga seat was where the voice originated. The head of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hiyashi, surprised everyone by rising to his feet and speaking. Indeed, it was a rare sight. Unless council matters were important to them, the majority of Hyuga would keep to themselves. During his 10 years as a leader, Hiyashi may have only spoken 3 times. He last spoke on behalf of the Konoha following the passing of Hyuga Hazashi, his twin brother. Carry on. Hiyashi leaned back in his chair. Judging that the Uchiha clan is on the brink of extinction and Naruto's newly noble status, my thought is having the lost Uzumaki clan also restored to glory. Everyone was in awe. This came too quickly. What was Hiyashi trying to force? They were aware that Hiyashi was one of the few clan heads who detested Naruto. Although Uzushio had been exterminated from the planet, Uzumaki Kushina was the last known active kunoichi in the 5 hidden villages to have the power to determine the fate of that clan. This village does not have authority over the Uzumaki clan. Uzushio and the remaining members of the Uzumaki clan have the right to restore the clan to prosperity. Tsunade, her grandmother is an Uzumaki, isn't she? It seemed that appearances could be deceiving, as a number of civilian council members did not like what Hiyashi was bringing to the table and believed that Hiyashi would support them in their fight against Naruto. Even though Tsunade was born into the Senju clan, she does have Uzumaki blood in her veins. Regarding Kushina's desires, she refused to accept responsibility for signing the Clan Restoration Act, CRA, and had revoked her nobility rights, which prevented any of her children from being born as nobles unless their father was a true noble. She added that the Uzumaki clan will continue to exist in spirit with us until the end of time as long as we wear the crest of her cherished village and clan. In this manner, we would avoid meeting Uzushio's fate. She had decided to spend her remaining years as a commoner for this reason. He was able to invoke CRA because of his adoption, which elevated him to a legal noble. People who are born or have inherited multiple noble ninja clan heritages are known as hybrids, and they are permitted to choose which clan of their bloodline they are willing to restore in accordance with Konoha's CRA regulations. After the achievement of 18 years, it was not decided whether Naruto's nobility should be revoked. The direction of this did not sit well with Danzo. If he was not permitted to use Naruto as a weapon, what use was it to breed a Jinchuriki? Indeed, he has the privilege, and what makes you think he's a hybrid? All due respect, elderly one, I wasn't implying that he's one. I'm merely suggesting a fact that I disapprove of Uzumaki San's wishes in not restoring the Uzumaki clan. It will be an immense asset to Konoha. I'm willing to marry my eldest daughter off to Naruto if things turn south. Kaharu angrily protested, how preposterous, we do not want to repeat the same mistake like we did with his mother. Good to mention it. The only way we can prevent a future catastrophe from reaping itself is restrict Naruto from having children, Danzo replied. I must concur with the elders, Hyuga. Sama. We cannot permit the Naruto, to have children of mass destruction while he is influenced by the Kyuubi. What an absurd intervention that is. How can you all do this to Minato's only child? Inoichi slammed his fist down on a pile of papers that was positioned and strewn about. A hero who let the Kyuubi live inside him and save this village and us. According to Shikamaru, he's right. Just like that, Choza said with a laugh. That's bias. Listen to Danzo, for once you're all impudent, ungrateful children, Himura growled. With a laugh, Hiyashi remarked, I must say you have it backwards, elder one. Hiruzen kept looking over the regulations of Konoha. I have nothing against that kid. The elders and civilian council had started to lose their temper, and this was the final straw. Every clan home was the target of accusations. It was becoming unmanageable. Order, order, caused them to halt, stating that most of the restrictions on him will be pointless. Hiruzen, you can't consider this. That boy will spawn abominations. Konoha is in danger, and we must cast a vote to decide an outcome. Himura was supported by many of them, but Hiruzen had other ideas. Unless he falls under the slavery class, and last I checked, slavery is illegal in the 5 great shinobi nations due to the treaty signed by the 5 Shoden Kages. Naruto is listed as a civilian of Konoha, and under the KCRA, Konoha's Civil Rights Act, he is to be treated equivalently. With that in mind, if you still wish to prevent Naruto from having children, then I must also grant every civilian under Konoha's jurisdiction the same fate. Himura snorted, you do that, Konoha won't last to see another decade. Thus, the Shoden Hokage stood and gestured to everyone, especially Hiyashi, saying, then I suggest that those whom agree reconsidered. And to finally end this session, Hyuga.san. If Naruto wishes to invoke CRA in the future, he has the privilege to restore the Uzumaki clan. That's for him to decide. And due to his nature to lack knowledge of arranged marriage and politics, I decreed that no one is to take advantage or bribe him in restoring the clan out of their own gain personal. It will be treason, and anyone caught will be punished severely by death. Now henceforth this meeting has come to a conclusion. Hiruzen was happy to be the first person to leave the conference room after a heated argument. If things got out of control, Anbu would take over. The catacomb resembled a box of electricity. You could be zapped into crispy creatures with a touch. Sasuke had too many near misses to count. The majority came from his brother, who is mentally challenged. How is it that even possible? His older brother explained, this is why they call it the Land of Lightning. This tower is created by conducting electricity from lightning strikes into a power surge. Still can't believe how Kumo couldn't find this place, Naruto replied. Itachi gazed at him passively and said, there's a reason our eyes are unique. They believed they could locate this tower if they had Hayazashi's Byakugan. For some reason the Sharingan is reacting to the current flow of electricity, Sasuke replied. The Byakugan is good because of its keen all-seeing eye to see the chakra network and various types of energy, whereas Sharingans are like scanners and analyzers. It is doubtful that any Hyuga or Byakugan user would have discovered the cavern as we did if they had not been able to decipher the lightning storm. How long has this tower been here, in your opinion? Did Naruto ask. There is no way to tell. This location has probably existed since the time of Rakudo Sennin. When Sasuke ascended the stairs first, he entered a large room covered in a great deal of rural and hieroglyphic writing. 3 tall castle-like pillars rose high above the abyss, and on each pillar was a statue of 3 men. The Rakudo Sennin himself, holding a golden goblet in his right hand. His eldest son, ancestor to the Uchiha and Hyuga clan, to his left, holding a silver goblet. And on the right, his youngest son, ancestor to the Senju and Uzumaki clan, holding a bronze goblet in both hands. It was difficult to tell who these 3 gentlemen were. There is something up ahead. The mural and glyphs were electrified with the sound of 1,000 chirps, and reaching high above, the circular part of the floor panel started to elevate like an elevator. As they approached, they noticed that the sculpture in the center of the pillars was a gigantic sculpture of a thunderbird reared back on its talons. The very moment they entered a circle that served as a boundary for the pillars, all they could hear was the clicking sound of a mechanism being activated. It was too dark to tell how high they were going, but the tower's ceiling opened as particles of medieval dust fell, and Naruto was fidgeting when a lightning bolt struck between his legs, revealing the black sky of nightfall once more with nothing but raging flashes of lightning. Whoa! Have you noticed that? I almost got struck by lightning, he spoke in unison. His brothers ignored his digressions, and Itachi waited until the floor panel stopped rising before deciding what to do. The floor panel stopped rising at that precise moment, and 3 floor levers appeared upright, one on each of the statues' heads. He looked at the map again. The map says to solve the riddle and embrace your lives. Naruto muttered, it sounds lame. While weaving a tiger hand seal, Itachi thought to himself, looks like each lever has to be pulled at the same time. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shadow clone technique. Naruto and Sasuke Sharingan immediately analyzed and copied the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu in its entirety, with Itachi's shadow clones dispersing and standing on each statue's head, seemingly grasping the idea of pulling the levers simultaneously. The 3 statues raised the goblets into a toast at that moment, and for a minute or so, nothing unusual seemed to happen. The statues then put the goblets back in their original positions, which disappointed the Uchiha brothers. Naruto grumbled, "Nothing happened, Oni. Sama, the Thunderbird's head was struck by lightning bolts every 5 minutes, and Sasuke and Itachi agreed that it was no accident that the lightning struck the same spot in a row. I think lightning is supposed to strike those cups." "My thoughts exactly," a smiling Itachi replied. When the goblets rose and clung to each other, the clones pulled the lever precisely 5 minutes later. But lightning had struck the goblets, causing them to catch fire, and a surge of electricity escaped beneath the 3 goblets with a thunderous sound, enclosing the statue in a dome of electricity. All of a sudden, the Thunderbird's body reeked with countless Fuin formulas, such as Orochimaru's Cure Fuin, and it all seeped into the eyes. "Nice, it's electrified," Naruto cried out. In a whisper, Sasuke said, "Embrace your lives." At this moment, Itachi's Sharingan's eyes read the threat that was placed upon them, and the Thunderbird's eyes opened and glowed red. "Come behind me, you too." Sasuke watched in wonder as Itachi tucked the scroll away in his black robe. Whatever the scroll was, it had done its job of blocking the onslaught attack. The Thundered Bird opened its mouth, revealing a sword hilt deep within its throat. Itachi unraveled the scroll in time to beat the statue, inhaling the electrical currents that surrounded it in a shroud of armor, and exhaling a high-density azure beam in one foul motion. Was that the scroll of that father? Yada Mirror, another ancient artifact of the Rakudos that is supposed to block everything in its path, Itachi said with a sly smile and a nod. Naruto mentally cursed, "Now I understand what it meant by, embrace your lives." Itachi was unable to pull on the sword because of a veil of electricity that formed around the statue's beak. Itachi had to give up another sword to his brothers once more. Sasuke was given access when it was his turn, and he yanked forcefully on the hilt. There. Sasuke wielded a long katana that was almost 6 feet long. Sasuke had a power boost because the sword had been struck by lightning. His entire body was wrapped in Chidori. To the surprise of the Uchiha brothers, he then took a practice swing. A dense beam of electricity erupted from his swing and soared into the chasm. Where the beam passed, there was undoubtedly someone standing. They would have been burned and zapped. The sword shrank to dagger length, allowing Sasuke to pocket the blade, and the cloak of electricity ripped from his body, leaving him stunned. What the hell? Itachi would never acknowledge that he was jealous of his 2 brothers now that they were brandishing Rakudo Sennin swords. However, only one sword remains, and it's the most deadly of the 3. The Totsuka sword. The only sword with a spiritual form rather than a physical one. He has been bothered by that the entire journey. How are they supposed to control something that is not human? Looks like the Thunderbird has chosen you to wield Masumune, the sword of the Thunder God Raiden. Awesome. A crack appeared between Naruto's legs, and it quickly spread to the floor panel's 4 corners. A short while later, one half of the panel sank unevenly. The tower is collapsing. When the Thunderbird came to life, it knelt down and flapped its wings, giving them the idea to jump on its back. Hop on. As the 3 statues with the goblets fell endlessly, the pillar that served as the floor pane's elevator collapsed, and the bird flew into the darkened sky. "I'm flying." Naruto cried out once more. Sasuke shook his head and snorted, saying, "We all are Dobi." "Oni. Sama, where is it taking us?" With a cheeky grin, Itachi said, "To our next destination. Your biological mother's birthplace Uzushiokager no Sato." Explosions and beams of plasma lit up the sky. A drone was being pushed out of the smoke from inside. The robot was destroyed by a uni beam that emerged from the smoke. Then, it seemed as though someone had switched on a radio. As several missiles arrived, the song Eye of the Tiger began to play. The regiment of flying spider drones was then promptly disposed of. From Oahu's eastern side, more Zodiac robot drones were arriving. Iron Man emerged from the sea of smoke. He started using Repulsive Ray, his fundamental offensive skill, from the palm of his gauntlets. The regiment was neutralized by the time the Eye of the Tiger Sun was done. Iron Man said, "Good afternoon workout. Jarvis, got reading on any activity?" The AI Jarvis tracked any adversaries using the satellite's radar. "It appears that Zodiac's minions have all been neutralized. Congratulations, sir," Jarvis replied. "Right, I have a date." Iron Man passed over Honolulu's downtown. Many yell as they watch him arrive. He gave the Shaka sign and waved to the crowd. Jarvis was on the other end of a cell phone call as he crossed the Ala Moana shopping center. Tony glanced at the phone type that the caller was using on the navigation dashboard. It was the iPhone 5, Apple's most recent release. He recognized the caller by looking at the caller ID. "Tony, where have you been?" Virginia screamed. I've been waiting here for like half an hour. The situation was very complex. He began thrusting as fast as he could after hearing her growl over the iPhone. How so? Saving Hawaii from a full-scale invasion. TCH. If you're not here in 1 minute, I'll leave. Roger that, Ms. Pepperpotts. He gave himself a salute. Or shall I say the future Mrs. Stark? He could hear her laughing. He grinned. Virginia said sultrily, "Don't count your eggs before it hatches, Mr. Stark." Near Diamond Head, Iran Man had reached a beach house. He started to hover over the land platform and descended gradually. The jet thruster on his robotic boots and gauntlets turned off as soon as his feet touched the ground. Tony's suit of armor began to come off as Jarvis' arms began to emerge beneath the platform. Tony wore 2 Japanese wooden sandals, $400 sunglasses, a gold leaf colored pair of surf shorts, and a maroon aloha shirt. A brunette with long red hair wearing a 2-piece black swimsuit on the sandy beaches of Kahala. She had curvy hips and light amber freckles on her cheeks. Compared to other white women, her skin tone was average. He sarcastically asked, "On whose authority, Mr. Pepperpotts?" Before running at full speed, she hung up the phone and let her iPhone fall to the sand. Tony almost got tackled, but he managed to keep his balance and scoop her in her armor by using the ball of his right foot. In midair, he threw her around 360 and brought her down while kissing her. After just 15 seconds of kissing, she gently pushed him away. Glaring at him, she placed a hand on her hips and said, "Do tell me that you flew from Japan, wearing this." She pouted, "What if you get the flu or a cold?" With the exception of those Zodiac savages, the man must improvise on a very tight schedule. Such vile, mass, destructive abominations. And to believe that I am to blame for the creation of their forebears. She cupped his chin and said, "You're not at fault. It's in the wrong hands now. But, hidden away inside that thick skull, they will never be able to learn about Iron Man. Nay, I've got a souvenir." The Kanai had such a battered scroll on the hilt that he took a black 3-prong out of the back of his shorts. He winked at her before puckering his lips. "One of Japan's antiques that is worth billions." Virginia laughed. "May we resume?" "Oh, mister. You're unique at all times." When she opened her eyes, she discovered that Tony Stark was gone like the wind. She had closed her eyes and leaned her head forward, but to her surprise, she felt no lips, no warm, moist skin covering her lips. How about Tony? In the land of the moon, somewhere. Unknown beach. Sakura's eyes trailed to her wife's breast, and Hinata's eyes were splashing salt water onto their faces as they cuddled into a ball and kissed passionately for a minute before breaking away. "I wish I had your size, Hinata." Hinata reddened violently. Sakura.san. "I like them." Naruto.kun must have liked them as well. A voice behind them remarked, "At least these are bigger." A man in his early 20s with blonde hair and 6 whisker markings, 3 on each cheek, arose behind them, and Sakura yelled as a hand caressed her butt. He grinned cheekily. Sakura, the pink-haired kunoichi, spun around and struck his skull with her fist. "Baka. I've told you repeatedly not to do that in public." Naruto massaging his aching head. He gave her the thumbs up, saying, "Last time I checked, this was a private resort, Dadbeo." She muttered, "Baka," while holding one of his hands. "Will you take action regarding Sakura? Chan, Hinata. Chan?" He sulked. Hinata laughed and said, "Yes. Yes, you can." Holding his other hand, Hinata said, "Come here and kiss us." The girls were pushed farther back into the ocean with the waves, towering over their heads, their eyes fixed on the shoreline where their husband was lying prone with someone draped over him, and Naruto smiled evilly as the 3 leaned in for a kiss, but something fell between them. Something was pressing against Naruto's lip, and he assumed it was one of his wives. However, when he opened his eyes, he saw that multi-billionaire Tony Stark was standing on top of him, and horror filled those cerulean eyes like nothing he had ever seen. From miles away, screams could be heard. Uzushio was reached by the Uchiha brothers. The 3 of them were very tired from the ride to Uzushio. Naruto's chakra reserves were the highest because he was a Jinchuriki, and he never faltered easily with these 2 brothers. Having the fewest reserves, Sasuke was completely destroyed. They arrived to find Uzushio in ruins. Hardly any evidence of unharmed buildings could be found. The destroyed village that was formerly allied with Konoha left Naruto and Sasuke in awe. Under the Uzumaki place, Itachi guided his brothers through the catacomb. Beneath was a secret passageway. But unlike the first 2, it was not booby-trapped. They actually came straight to an altar as a result. 6 large stone pillars carved into torches surrounded the rounded room. The nude Uzumaki female statue held a golden treasure chest in the center. As he moved toward the chest, Itachi's gaze strayed to his blonde brother, who clung to his collar. Naruto pivoted and glared at him. If you insist to bark and charge in before you think, create a Kage Bunshin and let the clone do it for you. Saying, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto nodded. Grinning, the clone sprinted recklessly over to the chest and opened it without hesitation. He looked inside. A dazzling ray of light hit his face. To protect his eyes from the bright light, the clone quickly embossed his duke. A transparent, light shape resembling a flaming ghost gourd the size of a typical human skull was located in the chest. The clone gave the original a quick look. Naruto gave a nod. The clone's hands attempted to touch it. The clone made a gesture. Inexplicably, the gourd's cap disappeared. A crimson light swirled through the clone's body in the shape of a longsword. As it was pulled and sealed inside the glowing gourd, the clone screamed. Naruto and Sasuke both exclaimed, "What the heck just happened?" together. It's said that nothing from this world can touch and wield Totsuka. So how we to retrieve it, Datbeo? Itachi turned on the Mangekyo and said, "Good question, Tsunanu." Unknown location. At least 3 weeks ago. It was in a cave that Mikoto woke up. Her whereabouts and the duration of time since her kidnapping are unknown. She took in the view. 2 torches were lit on opposite sides of a bed where she was sleeping in the center of a room that resembled a cave. She was able to see the ceiling better. Tree roots entangled it. She knew it must be some binding jutsu keeping her from getting away because she could feel chakra resonating from these roots. The wooden table beside Mikoto's bed causes her onyx eyes to glaze. It contained her duffel bag containing her possessions and a clock. She was a little relieved. She recoiled and threw herself back onto her bed as the door to her room opened. She was approached by a man in black robes who placed a tray of provisions beside her duffel bag on the table. With his face hidden behind the hood's shades, the hooded man turned to face her. "Ah, it's been a while. Hasn't it?" The man's voice had sounded familiar, but Mikoto scowled at him. "Who are? Why bring me here first place? To save you from Konoha." "What?" She turned pale. "I'm fully aware of your husband and clan's betrayal, and I brought you here for 2 other reasons. To ensure that your eldest son does not overstep his boundaries in Akatsuki." "What's the other reason?" After removing the hood from his head, the man grinned. Mikoto's eyes widened in disgust at the man with the cerulean eyes and golden, spiky dreadlocks. The man in front of her was her childhood crush, her former genin teammate, a hero during the Third Shinobi Wars, and Konoha's savior on numerous occasions. He was believed to have died almost 7 years ago. Despite being promised to Fugaku at birth, she had loved him for almost her whole life. However, she fell in love with her best friend, who later became the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze Uzushio. At this time, Susanoo, played by Itachi, held the sword of Totsuka. Susanoo was holding the gourd over its head when Naruto and Sasuke stood in awe. Suddenly, blue, transparent flames erupted from the statue bulb torches. Grim Reaper. Like phantom wraiths appeared out of nowhere. They transformed their bodies into flaming arrows and hurled themselves at the brothers Uchiha. Itachi released a magical barrier and pulled out the Yada scroll. They touched the mirror. The wraiths, similar to badminton, their bodies were reflected off the Yada mirror. "What are those?" Ni-san. "Those are phantoms, guardians of Totsuka." "Phantoms?" shrugged Naruto. "More like ghosts, Dobi." Naruto stammered, G.gh. "Ghost. I hate ghosts." He let out a sniffle. "Afraid are you?" Sasuke asked with a malignant grin. Itachi responded, "Nothing to fret about," as the Yada mirror deflected the second wave of attacks. "This is another trial. See for yourselves." As a longsword's bright light extended toward the waves of wraiths, the cap was removed from the gourd. They let out a dejected screech. They were sealed for all time when their bodies were drawn into the gourd by their longsword. The Yada mirror was then removed from its owner's grasp by Susanoo. In order to accommodate the Susanoo chakra belt, where it was mounted for future use, the Yada and Totsuka had both nearly tripled in size. Very impressive. To obtain the Yada mirror and the sword of Totsuka will give your Susanoo the ultimate offense and defense, thereby becoming the ultimate weapon. As anticipated from the Uchiha clan prodigy. Naruto was the most shocked of the 3, and they all turned toward the Yondaime Hokage. Sasuke thought, "This is Naruto's too. Sama, the Yondaime Hokage," but he felt sick at the idea of Mikoto being raped by a man other than his father. "Dad?" Naruto inquired uneasily. For the first time in almost 7 years, Minato looked at his son. He was glaring at Naruto on the outside, but his innermost feelings were hidden. "You look good, son. I apologize for not being there for you throughout your life, both your mother and me." But you don't deserve my time. He feigned a sly smile at Naruto. Naruto screamed, feeling as though daggers were constantly piercing his heart. You abandoned me, Naruto sobbed. Unfortunately, you don't have the luxury to be chatting, as your stepmother's life is at stake. You were the one who abducted her, Itachi said, causing his younger brother to look at him warily. Do you intend to ruin me? Minato looked up at Susanoo and made fun of him. Itachi and his brothers were terrified when Minato reappeared behind them, flushing a kunai to his throat. They had heard stories about the Hiraishin no Jutsu, which is faster than lightning. Even the Mangekyo was unable to follow or trace Minato's speed, but Itachi still didn't understand how he had managed to do it without using his renowned three-prong kunai. Amazing! An enigmatic Itachi yelled. Just before you guys entered, I set up my level 2 Hiraishin to activate here, where we are both standing with a Shiki. Mark of speed. Give up or meet your father in oblivion. It's all over. Itachi smirked as he looked up at the active Shiki, which was circling up his leg like a centipede. Perhaps, you underestimate Uchiha, Hokage, Sama. Minato was amazed by the amazing scenery that Mikoto's son had created, and he is a true prodigy for using such a powerful general jutsu as the Tsukuyomi. His eyes were captured by the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, and his world went blank for 10 seconds before he appeared inside an active volcano, standing on magma. So, this is how you murdered your family members. Tsukuyomi's casting on the Uchiha clan. Extremely primitive, but given the situation, I would have acted in the same way as you. But your delusion has me totally fooled. Itachi studied the renegade Hokage and was fascinated by his knowledge of the secrets of the Uchiha clan. All of this was the reason Itachi should get rid of Minato before he became a greater threat to him and his family, but he had a gut feeling that Minato wasn't there to hurt them or would have done so already. You had every reason to have me killed before you announced your presence. Either you forced me to cast Tsukuyomi, or it was a ruse to keep the third party from listening in. Therefore, you will be asked 2 questions that will keep an unwanted company from hearing them. How did you make it through? And why did you lie to Konoha? With a laugh, Minato stroked his chin and said, Too shrewd. I can see why he picked you in the first place. It all begins with Akatsuki and the leader. Talk. Who is the leader? Itachi shrugged, the brother of the man who'd permeated and varnished my son with his Sharingan and blood. Minato frowned. You already know who it is. Itachi's face was as white as a ghost and pale, to put it mildly. Rewind. Minato. Sama, however, how did you manage to survive? I survived, so I could keep the village and Kushina safe. Mikoto fidgeted with her fingers, feeling anxious, angry, and sad at the same time. If the Yandame was still alive, it meant that he was a traitor, having betrayed the village with which he had been affiliated and taken an oath as a shinobi and the Yondaime Hokage. Her mind drifted to Kushina, a friend from her childhood. Where is she? Minato gave her a grudging glance and said, I demand an explanation right away. She's safe and kept hidden from the world. You're beyond my comprehension. What made you leave Konoha? We'll do that later. What I want to know now is whether you are still infatuated with me. On the other hand, has it been wasted? Even when Fukagu claimed to be her virgin, Mikoto's blush was nothing compared to the one she was expressing when she was horny due to Minato's attractive image. Even during sex, she thought of Minato, imagining him in place of Fukagu, and she almost screamed out his name on multiple occasions during her climax with Fukagu. Mikoto knew that people were born to marry whoever they want, and this wasn't her case. She was deprived of that freedom with her arranged marriage to Fukagu. Every time he fucked her, Mikoto knew it was lust, not affection, and she knew deep down that she was nothing more than a trophy wife and a sex slave, born to be one without question. Many would consider her a whore and a wife who had committed mental adultery. However, the way Minato looked at Kushina and treated her was first-rate affection and loyalty, which she needed and wanted. Now that she is a widow, she and Kushina can finally fulfill their long-held childhood dream of sharing Minato. Indeed, she and Kushina are bisexual and had been having discreet sex before Minato and Kushina started dating and she wed Fukagu. And Minato might fall in love with one of them, but what about Mikoto? She knew that despite their spending together as teenagers, Minato never showed interest in her, and when the team finally broke up, Mikoto never had the confidence to ask him out on dates because he claimed that Jiraiya Sensei was like a father to him and his teammates were like brothers and sisters. Now that was the only thing standing between her and Kushina's dreams. His feelings for her were purely platonic. How is she going to win Minato over to her way of thinking? You are a married individual. She continued to blush as she said, you have no right to ask me that. You're scheduled to become my concubine. Mikoto's expression was priceless. She passed out. Much like Hinata did in front of Naruto, her cheeks and forehead as red as Kushina's hair. Thanks to the Hiraishin, the journey to Kirikage was quicker than lightning. Minato was supposed to go with them, and they hadn't spoken since they left Uzushio. Sasuke, the most enraged of his two brothers, wanted to strangle Minato right then and there because Minato reminded him of Fukagu, who had been betrayed by his father and was now going through it again with Naruto and Minato. Unsheathing Masamune, Sasuke drew it up to 6 feet in size. Minato grinned as she looked in his direction. You intend to wield that sword? Make sure your hit is clean. In the past, everyone who tried to attack me failed miserably. Itachi put a hand on his shoulder and said, Sasuke, think reasonably. Despite nodding, Sasuke continued to glare at the smiling Yondaime. He sheathed Masamune in its scabbard after shrinking it to the length of a dagger. This is where I leave you 3. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that since I've aided the 3 of you, I'll have to move up the deadline. You have exactly 24 hours to assassinate the Yondaime Mizukage and meet at Kiri's Center Plaza. Itachi cautiously questioned, what's the motive behind it? Isn't a bit suicidal? That's your problem, not mine. Your job is not to ask questions, just simply carry them out. He pointed beyond the bluffs. Over there is where you begin your final journey. Terumi Rei awaits all of you there at the resistance camp. Join up with her. She is the leader of the resistance. With great anticipation, Naruto inquired, what does she look like? Minato laughed. I'm glad you asked, son. She has long auburn hair. She has jugs of the legendary Sanin Senju Tsunade. Nothing you need to worry about except for one thing. Don't piss her off. Her temper can easily rival your mother's. Your mother was a monster back in the day, hidden beneath beauty. Just ask your elder brother. Sasuke and Naruto look at a trembling Itachi. All that rang in his ear was demonic. Minato vanished from the picture. Naruto stayed passively silent and didn't say anything. Sasuke reflected that it was not an ordinary sight for a noisy, annoying boy. Perhaps Minato's abrupt appearance and pulled behavior mentally dramatized him. After giving Naruto a back pat, Sasuke turned to face Itachi. Sasuke said, what was that all about, Ni-san? It indicates that we have tasks to complete. Mei had just returned to the camp, barely recovered from fighting off waves of Kiri shinobi. She was the only survivor of the onslaught, and the resistance was reduced to less than 40 shinobi after a resistance platoon was destroyed. At this rate, we will be crushed. Jinchurou is correct, Mei. Sama. We must give up now, while we still have the opportunity. Sasama declared, we have no chance against Kisame and the other 7 swordsmen of the mist. Her dreams and goals were to purge Kiri of the blood mist age and restore peace and prosperity, but she couldn't accomplish that with weak-minded subordinates by her side. Mei studied the grim expressions of both of her subordinates. She was not going to find prosperity if she changed and knelt before Yagura the Yondaime Mizukage. She had witnessed enough horror and brutality committed by the Yondaime to last a lifetime. I would sooner die defending Kirikage than submit to that monster. If someone wants to leave, they can, but be careful. You will all be labeled rogue ninjas whether or not the coup succeeds. What are your thoughts? There will be no surrender, so fight with me or flee like a coward. We will all be put to death for high treason by Yagura. Eliminating Yagura and putting an end to his rule is the only way to ensure our survival. However, that is unrealistic, my lady. Jinchurou shook his head, saying, we don't have the numbers to continue this campaign. The Uchiha has not yet arrived. With those fabled swords, they have the ability to tip the scales in this civil war in our favor. We don't even know that they will succeed, or that they will even come to our aid. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Mei grinned as everyone turned to stare at Itachi and his brothers as they waltzed into the camp. And who are the 3 of you? Sasama inquired courteously. Trust it. We are the Sharingan brothers, Naruto cried. Datebeo. The whole camp remained stunned, and his 2 brothers were glaring at him. Rewind. 2 weeks prior, she was shocked to learn that the concubine ceremony had gone so well 3 days prior, with the exception of the lack of traditional sex to consummate the marriage. As if she had no choice, she was a slave to his words and is now Namikaze Minato's second wife and his first concubine. She never asked why he never took her and claimed her as his own, even though he claimed that he was willing to help her restore the Uchiha clan and keep her from falling into the wrong hands of other men by marrying them, and that she would be a part of Naruto's life as more than a foster parent. She also suspected that Minato is too faithful of a man to take another woman to bed, even if Kushina allowed him to do so. The honeymoon was not as she had anticipated, and even in marriage, Minato's feelings for her were entirely platonic. She wrapped the towel over her soaked raven hair, putting on her nightgown slowly, brushing her hair while gazing up at the tree roots on the ceiling. During her first week here, she attempted to break free and hit Minato over the head, but the roots coiled her like vines, preventing her from doing so. If she followed the rule Minato had given her, she would have the freedom to explore. This was Makoto's chance to change his mind. Minato was waiting outside the bathroom, his gaze wandering over her half exposed bra. Less chess. Makoto's cheeks flared red, and he was staring at her tits, where raging hormones and embarrassment were battling for control inside of her. Minato continued to stare at them as if she were a statue. She quickly tied the girth tighter so that less of the opening around her torso could be exposed, and then she slapped Minato across the face. She looked up at the root turrets, but they retracted on command before they could ensnare her. If she didn't cover up, Minato would be given the impression that she was still a fangirl and a potential slut, which Makoto didn't want on her mind. This was not the fan girl he knew, Minato thought, rubbing the handprint mark on his cheek as his eyes studied her curiously. I was aware of it, just like Sensei, you were perverted, in his face, she spat. Minato laughed and dabbed at his own saliva. You seem to have been tarnished by Fukagu's seeds alone. Because you have also been betrayed, you are afraid to get close to another man. I am also aware of betrayal. Your clan and Konoha's elders have betrayed Kushina and me to the man wearing the orange mask. When he mentioned Madara, Makoto winced, but he quickly shifted the subject. You know, I had to try it. I am a pervert for staring at your breasts. She turned her head away from him, flushed like the adolescent girl she was. I'm actually delighted that you don't want to get your hands dirty, so don't worry. That's excellent. The statement was partially false. I always liked the penis pump method because I felt nothing when I stared at your chest or your half naked body. The only thing I need to do is recall one of my make-out sessions with Kushina. Please feel free to use my seeds as you see fit. Good day. He began to walk away. She never thought he would attack her in that way, but he was right, at least he tried. Makoto may have just thrown her ticket to sleep in his bed, but she can't back down. She doesn't want to be a trophy wife like in her previous marriage. She wants to be a woman who deserves genuine affection from her husband, not a tool. Her heart was broken when he said that. You and Fugaku are identical. Actually, you're exactly like him. Minato furrowed her brow. Stop staring at me that way. Even though Fukagu was the only one to fuck me, I am familiar with the look of desire and lust in the eyes of men who have undressed me over the years. Instead of loving me, they want to fuck me. It simply amazes me where you're going with this. Oh my god. I've noticed a change in your mannerisms and the way you gaze at me ever since you and Kushina started dating. On Team Jiraiya, you are not the same Minato. I know a Minato whose eyes would never have undressed me. Who are you, then? Such speculation will get you nowhere, my love, Minato said with a laugh. My dear? Kushina told you her big secret when you two started dating, she said, laughing. Oh, you mean she had an affair with another woman and is bisexual? She did tell me that, and I have nothing against it, he said, laughing at a shocked Makoto. That was before we were a couple, and just like with your previous marriage, I have no right to reveal details about her past romantic life. However, his face displayed perverted emotional implications as he gestured toward her. One evening after returning from a 3-year trip training with Jiraiya Sensei, I went to see Kushina at her apartment. I heard grunting and moaning. As I stepped onto the balcony, I initially believed Kushina was being attacked. I caught a glimpse of Kushina making out with someone through the window. You are the one she was making out with, and it felt like a boa constrictor was tightening my heart. Makoto was too scared to look him in the eyes. At first, I was shocked to see that Kushina also had feelings for women. You were both yelling my name in utter ecstasy when I saw you there. All of my anger had subsided, and my level of happiness had fully recovered to its previous level. I didn't find myself lusting for a single woman that evening. Makoto's eyes were watering, and Minato cupped her chin and tipped it up. I've been grieving for my sister in Team Jiraiya ever since she passed away in front of me that night. I no longer saw you as a sister, but rather as something completely different. I sincerely regret snooping on you too. Weeping, Makoto wiped her eyes. What prevented you from telling me the truth in the first place? What do you think of me now? Like a coward, Minato averted her gaze and motioned her to retreat. My remarks were excessive. You are forced to reinstate the Uchiha clan whether you like it or not. 3 choices are available. I'll give you my seed after I knock you up. Or you will take care of it for me. When Minato turned to face her and grinned slyly, she shrank. If you're not pregnant by the time he assumes total control over me, believe me when I say this. You will regret not choosing options 1 and 10 before he ends your relationship with you. Minato flinched under Makoto's iron grip as she pulled him toward her, her hands gripping his collar. "Who is he? Minato, answer me. Let's just say that you already have met his younger brother just before you departed Konoha." Minato gave her a phony evil laugh in response to the horrified expression in her eyes. She said, "You're a madman," in a faint voice. "You're a monster." She gave him a face slap. Minato merely let out a hysterical laugh. "Monster? You're the monster. You betrayed your best friend and sold her out to Danzo or Konoha." "I did no such thing. I love Kushina." "Fitting. Your clan were not present at the night the Kyuubi was extracted from Kushina after she gave birth to Naruto. And you know what happened to Naruto? He was nearly killed 3 times. Minato growled at a weak Makoto. "The masked man tossed him up in the air and used him for kunai practice, and that was not enough. He attached paper bombs on Naruto's covering, to lure me away from Kushina, while you worked on. Please. Enough. You know what happened when we were sealing the 9 tails in Naruto. The thing swung its claw out, threatening to kill Naruto. My wife and I stood in front of him and deflected the claw by giving our bodies as a sacrifice. You can't even begin to imagine the agony he endured as our insides were torn apart from our bodies for 10 minutes. Kushina was near death, and I was powerless to save her." He scowled. "Now how do you feel? No. The only thing she could do was to have me extract her last bit of chakra and seal it into Naruto so she could see him one last time in the future. After everything they've been through, are you proud to call yourself Naruto's mother and Kushina's friend?" Makoto was so confused that she was barely able to speak. I apologize. Just stop." Makoto had a suspicion that Minato might take her to bed, so when he laid her on the bed, she was a little taken aback that he was leaving the room. Minato reached down and brushed the hair out of her face and wiped the tears away from her face. "Fair enough." Minato carried her bride style and he was going to the master's room. "Don't worry, I'm not the kind of guy who would exploit a beautiful woman. I'll bring my semen and get some rest in the morning." Makoto's face turned red, but she thought, at least there's still a sane part of him left. She laughed in her head. "Madara Uchiha. Would he have been the one to save you from the Shiiki Fujin?" "I don't understand," Minato said, nodding. "Kushina told me that after the caster's soul has finished the sealing ceremony, the Shinigami takes it out and consumes it. In what way are you still alive? Do you know that Madara stole the Shodai Hokage's abilities and cell? Hashirama's cells contained not only the yang chakra of the Sage of the Six Paths and the ability to use wood release jutsu, but they also contained extraordinary life force that could regenerate damaged tissue and limbs, replenish someone's depleted life force, and transfer their life force and soul into another person to extend their lifespan." Makoto shrugged. "Such as this." Makoto would have blushed if it weren't for the head-shaped figure of a young Madara on Minato's skin. She examined it and saw that the head was alive but sleeping. Then, her heart began to pound on the side of her ribcage, and Minato looked at her sorrowfully. Minato had taken off his white robes and lifted up his long, sleeved shirt to reveal his well-muscled torso. "I lived my life like this. I felt the life force and soul of Madara, however, I'm not sure whose soul was used in the transaction." Beyond the boundaries of the camp, the Sharingan brothers waited in ambush inside the trenches that the rebels had dug for a while. Naruto, who was usually the most impatient of the 3 brothers, complained the most about lying on the ground because the pebbles were pricking his ribs and insects were crawling over his orange jumpsuit. Sasuke told him to stop talking. I heard Itachi murmur, "Here they come." A knot formed in Naruto's throat as he saw a regiment of 20 ninjas marching in a single line. These were not your average ninjas. They were the best and most elite shinobi nation could ever have, and their strange masks that covered their faces had always frightened him. The rebels screamed war cries as they threw in shurikens and kunais, and Mei signaled the attack by raising her hand and bringing it down like an axe slicing through a log. The majority of the Anbu were caught by surprise, and 3 ninjas fell into their own pool of blood, gushing out from the fatal wounds. They were literally covered with projectiles, pricking out from their own flesh. "Take off." Mei let out a cry. Gasping as Naruto thrust inward, he stared at the blonde toddler in disbelief before falling onto his back, bathing in his own pool of blood. Naruto slouched forward, slamming the Buster Sword into the closest man's chest, and the man countered it on the center of his Ninhanto, but it was never enough to stop the inevitable, devastating thrust of Naruto's brute thrusts that severed the Ninhanto in half. The weight of the man's body was too heavy for him to hold Retribution's hilt, and the sword stayed embedded. Naruto tried to pry the sword out of the corpse as quickly as he could, but there were too many Anbu closing on him, and his stomach churned. Deep fear gave him all the strength and adrenaline he needed to pry Retribution free. The first Anbu misjudged Naruto's speed as a swordsman, believing that the child's immature size and knowledge could make him superior head on. It would be impossible for a mere child or genin to match a Jonin or Anbu's speed, but Naruto was different. The man reached out with a kunai, aiming the pointed end down at Naruto's throat to kill the toddler. The fallen Anbu's comrades deadpanned, but their anger replaced it, and they launched water bullet jutsu at Naruto. Naruto held out retribution diagonally, left hand on tip and right hand on hilt, pushing the flat end of the sword into the balls of projected water. That was the last thing he ever did, as a black curtain was placed over his vision, causing him to be decapitated. Retribution countered his expectation that he would be overwhelmed by the impact of the surge of water bullets by absorbing them into itself and creating a bubble shroud of water around himself. Naruto was shocked, unable to explain or come to terms with what had just happened. He felt his hands getting wet, but the water was lukewarm rather than cold. Naruto shrugged and charged the remaining Anbu that were pursuing him to kill him, expecting to use retribution to cut them down. However, on the first stroke, it unleashed a tidal wave, catching the Anbu off guard and pulverizing them with the body of water. Naruto looked at the wet, dripping retribution, which no longer had the water, bubbling shroud. Nice, he cried out. Naruto's gaze fell on his brothers, and Sasuke Masamune pierced 3 Anbu through the chest like chickens on a spit. Itachi then cast Tsukuyomi on the remaining Anbu, approached them, and used his katana to cut them down. As they watched the 3 brothers slay the regiment, Mei was so impressed by the legendary swords that she held back her man. Amazing. As stated in the scrolls, the Sword of Retribution has the ability to absorb, reflect, and expel all 5 elements back toward its target. The Masamune can summon lightning from the sky and reach an infinite distance. Even though Sasuke never did that, the boys later joined Mei at the hot spring. Itachi, who was old enough to feel his hormones raging, couldn't bear the sight of a beautiful naked woman so close to him. His cheeks were red. The boys, who were still too young to have any intimacy, were never bothered by the sight of a naked woman. Instead, they occasionally bathed with Makoto. The encounter with Mei was just another act of pampering. Mei glanced at the boys as she brushed their heads and backs, and she didn't mind because it reminded her of her younger brother, who was only 8 years old when he was killed by Yagura at the start of the rebellion. She instantly forced that painful memory from her mind. How old are you all then? 7. Datebeo. Sheesh. You didn't need to yell, Dobi. That's quite alright, Mei said. I see where he gets his boisterous and energetic traits from. You were acquainted with my parents? Oh, yes, my love. Not as much as your mother, though. How did she behave? She joked, your mother was a motormouth, adding that she was extremely attractive. She was a close friend and mentor to me. When I first met her during the Chunin exams, I was perhaps a couple of years older than you. Because of her gorgeous long red hair, which gave her a demonic appearance when she soloed by beating up groups of boys, Konoha called her the hot-blooded habanero. She and her husband Minato gained notoriety during the Third Shinobi Wars, so Konoha was aware of her reputation. This is how I've come to know Kushina as a Jinchuriki, hosting the Kyuubi inside her. Mei grinned at a startled Naruto. In foreign lands, Kushina was nicknamed the Crimson Death from her heroic deed, devastated Kumo's army, nearly laid the Sandaime Raikage to waste. According to legend, the Raikage defeated the Hachibi, 8-tailed beast, in a single battle. Not at all. The boys all uttered the same words, and even Itachi appeared taken aback. It was claimed that the Raikage's body was more durable than titanium. Even the 8 tails were unable to penetrate his skin. But that was a different story with the 9 tails. She furrowed her brows. Kushina infused the Kyuubi's chakra into her chakra chains. It managed to shackle him by penetrating his impregnable armor. The Uzumaki clan used these enchanted chains to restrain and enclose anything. In milliseconds, these chains could tighten and rip a cow's bone flesh. The Raikage resisted, trying to reach her by pouring lightning bolts into the chains, but the chains were not made of an alloy that could conduct electricity, and it was pointless because his body was only mortal. His son stepped in time to cut her chakra chain binds from her, and I stood there in horror, spitting my undeveloped magma into the face of the oldest son, Speed, who is an incredible man. I had never seen a man move like that until I was going to die. My chest would have been torn apart by E's fist. The next thing I knew, your father was holding me in his arms like a bride. Kushina was engaged to Minato. That's how I became friends with your father and started to feel a slight affection for him. She blushed. I acknowledge that he's attractive enough to compete with any Uchiha man, but I didn't pursue my feelings for Minato out of respect for Kushina. My adoration for him eventually faded. We are grateful to Kami and Minato for saving your mother and me that evening. Tears were streaming down Naruto's face, but he remained silent. May has been talking about Kushina as though she were deceased. The thought of his mother dead caused a golf ball sized knot to form in his throat. He hoped that she was still living among the living, just like his miserable father. His voice was pitiful as he asked, "Is my Ka-chan lives?" May trembled. "I don't know." Minato refuses to say anything about her. She could see the sweat trickling down his cheeks. She reasoned that it wasn't from the hot spring. "I think you guys are all set. Let me have a word or two with you Sama." Sasuke and Naruto let out a weary sigh and parted ways. Itachi's eyes were filled with horror, and Sasuke saw it. He was yelling at them to leave him alone in the nude with the kunoichi. May gave her lips a sensual smack. Her face was red in the face. "So," she exclaimed joyfully, "do you have a girlfriend?" Itachi felt his loins harden like never before, and his shoulders slumped, knowing where this topic was going. In any case, he was naked when he got up and never responded to her. Wait. May had shined out of the hot spring after seeing it for no more than 2 seconds. In her life, May had only seen a few male penises. A week prior. "Let me get that for you. I know what I'm doing. I wish for no further assistance." "I didn't recall you being the stubborn type. What has Fukagu done to my sweet, meekly Mikoto?" He laughed. As though he were about to give her an embrace, Minato stood behind her, reaching over her on both sides, in order to flip the fried over easy eggs in the frying pan. Minato put his right hand on hers and moved her hands with the spatula. He helped her carefully transfer the eggs to another plate. Reaching over her, he took the frying pan off of her and placed it on a spit over a bonfire. He clamped her other wrist with his other hand. They held her in those powerful arms. As he inhaled the aroma of her hair, she could feel his husky breath slipping down the back of her neck. He put his arms around her waist and pulled her in as she shuddered. She felt the erection in his lower area flushed against her flesh because she was pressed so close to him. By Kami, there was nothing she could do to stop this man from raping her. "He forced himself upon you, didn't he?" Mikoto tensed up at his inquiry. Knowing that he was going to take her without her permission, she wondered what difference it would make. She never responded because she was worried that her juicy mouth would give the wrong response. For a few minutes, Minato simply held her in silence. As he relaxed his hold on her, he said, "Look at me." She never had time to react as he swiftly whirled her around. Minato inadvertently groped her buttocks, causing her to yell. With an apologetic glance, he swiftly moved his hands up her waist. "Poor thing," he muttered. "Such a pity." She cursed herself for not pressing her lips together. "What is?" she asked. He knitted his brows. "You never experienced pleasure, haven't you? 2 sons you've given birth to, and the bastard not once gave you pleasure." He moved his head closer. She had a golf ball-sized lump in her throat. He whispered, "Shush," and brushed the black hair out of her eyes. His other hand moved to her right and gave it a light pat. Only a few centimeters separated his lips. "Minato. MMMH." He pressed his lips to hers. His tender kiss made her shudder. His lips brushed her upper lip rather than forcing themselves into her mouth. Her body responded to his lips somehow, waiting for him to open it. His tongue moved into her mouth and entwined itself with hers, exchanging saliva back and forth. They quickly parted their lips. He mounted her on his lap, facing him, and sat in his rocking chair, carrying her bride style. Minato brought her lips back together. Mikoto was still shocked, but he showed no interest in showing her where he would take her bedsporting. Oh, she thought, Kami. She had never felt a man's pleasure so tender and considerate. Minato took her time, carefully exploring her, while Fukugu always kissed her sloppy and forcefully. He did not impose himself on her as she had previously believed. Her body resisted her will, and she groaned into his mouth. She kissed him more deeply. Her stomach hurt and begged to be plowed. She desired to have him inside of her. On the tent of his erection, she felt her underwear soaked with her fluids. He rocked in the chair and held her like a baby as they kissed for 5 more minutes. Minato was experiencing an uncontrollable surge in her hormones. He knew he had to stop before he lost himself when lust started to set in. Kushina has such a good taste in women. It is to my loss that I hadn't explored you 2 sooner while you were betrothal to Fukagu. I would have taken you away. Thus you would have experienced pleasure beyond your imagination. Asked Kushina. He laughed. Her cheeks were red, but she remained silent. She was a little envious of Kushina. Not because she has Minato, but rather because she was unable to feel the love her late husband gave her. Pleasure can only be given only when a woman desires it. Without it, it would become a woman's nightmare, which by the likes of you suffered. I have no intentions of inflicting those nightmares upon you. My ravishment is blissfulness, never torture. However, your body desires me while your heart and will are rebellious. This also can't be out of pleasure. You'll come to regret it once I've taken you. All three, the mind, body and soul must given to me. She reasoned that he wouldn't bed her. She was read like a book by Minato. She now genuinely thought Minato knew her better than Fugaku. After growing up with him in the academy and joining Team Jiraiya, that is to be expected. Not feeling romantic affection through rutting seemed worse than being a whore, in her opinion. She failed to live up to Minato's expectations, even though she knew he was the man of her dreams. Her cheeks began to well up with tears. She was overflowing with joy. Despite his remark, Minato was not a fan of raving women. Regardless of whether they were platonic or not, he held all women in the highest regard and treated them like precious possessions. He had numerous opportunities to take her, but he never did. He was an honorable and dignified man. A man's lust is very dangerous to any woman caught inside. There is no on-off switch for the raging hormones. Most men go crazy and berserk. Women are frequently raped and murdered because they have no control. Even husbands and good men are capable of these heinous acts. I've never lusted for any other woman except Kushina. Mostly, I don't get to plow her womb because she isn't ready for sex. A man's only options are to masturbate until he orgasms or jerk off with his penis. Makoto's face was as red as a tomato, but Minato grinned and said, I'm in this embarrassing situation. Very abashing, but it works like magic. Makoto was seated in the rocking chair after Minato got up. I will return with my seeds in half an hour, even though my prick is still as rigid as a rock. You should eat before entering that room. Makoto was left perplexed by her thoughts about Minato, who was never afraid to express his opinions with such inappropriate remarks in front of his mate or mates. Perhaps this was the other side of him that she had not yet discovered, and perhaps it would explain the many times Kushina would beat him to a bloody pulp. He pointed toward the basement door and fled in the opposite direction. Where had his manners gone, after all? She laughed. After finishing her breakfast, she went down the stairs that led to a chamber that looked like some kind of laboratory. Inside the transparent tubes were large vials filled with distorted human specimens, all of which looked to be identical, possibly clones. As she examined one of the specimens, which was covered in a green, toxic-like substance and had a respirator on its mouth, many bubbles formed. At the far end of the chamber was a much larger case, and as she approached it, her heart almost leapt out of her mouth. Inside the case, the red-headed Uzumaki Kushina lay peacefully naked, with several tree roots protruding from her back from the spinal cord. Her eyes traveled down to the location of the roots, which had broken through the case's floor panel and burrowed with the earth, which had raised the tube some time ago. She thought, it looks like Kushina was part of the earth itself. Her gaze went to her torso, where the massive scar from the Kyuubi's claw was still visible. Her torso had been rebuilt, but the scarring would permanently destroy the beauty of her body. What on Kami's green earth did they do to you? She screamed and screamed for help, but it was in vain as the vines grew up beneath her and ensnared her. My friend, it's been much too long. Is it you, Kushina? Yes, I am speaking to you telepathically. Minato and I are planning to rid this world of Madara, but we don't have all day to get to know this reunion. What I tell you must remain a secret.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.